Matt and Greg used to interview movie stars, but now they're doing a podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first show of
Matt and Greg used to interview movie stars.
I am Greg Srzawasti.
And I'm Matt Levitz. And we are Matt. Well, that would be Greg and Matt. We did it wrong.
We did it wrong. And that's a way to open up the show, folks. But we're going to do a lot of things right with this first podcast.
I think we did it wrong could be the slogan of our show.
Rice. Right. Did I just say rice? So anyways, that is Matt. I am Greg.
Yeah.
But more importantly, this is our first show. What is our first show going to be about, Matt?
Well, episode number 1 is Men in Black.
MIB.
Yeah. So we are going to be hearing interviews from Vincent D'Onofrio, director Barry Sonnenfeld, Linda Fiorentino, producers Walter F. Parks, Laurie McDonald, and Steven Spielberg, and, of course, Will Smith.
Tell the listeners, Matt, what they can expect from the show. What is the show?
It's junket interviews. You and I used to sit in a room with a bunch of other people and interview movie stars.
Back in the 90s. But the most important thing is we're giving the listeners a show about all these great interviews.
And we are going to play them in their entirety, which has never been done before. These are not what the interviews were originally intended for.
Right.
You know, back in the day when we recorded them, we would sit down with all the biggest stars of the day for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time, and there would be all this great stuff, and they would tell us these stories, and then we would go back to our offices and go, okay, what are the best 20-second little clips that we can put out there? And we would kind of listen to it and find things that were interesting that would work for what our shows were at the time.
Right.
And then we would just send only those sections out, and then we would shelve the interviews. We would stick them in an archive, and no one would ever hear from them again.
Yeah.
So here it is 20, 25 years later. These tapes all still exist, and they're great. So we're releasing them for the first time ever, and they're going to be unedited. We're not going to clean them up at all.
I loved listening to these interviews.
Yeah, well, the interviews were kind of wide-reaching because they were always based around a film. We were there because a movie was coming out, and so they would give us all of the talent from that movie. But then we would just talk about other things. We would talk to them about future projects and things that were going on in their lives at the time, which, are now kind of dated because if you were to interview these guys now, they would talk in past tense about what was going on with them then.
Right.
But at the time, they were in the middle of it, and they still remembered everything really well.
Yeah.
So you get a very different perspective hearing them then as opposed to hearing them now. Plus, there's quite a few people who are no longer with us. A lot of the people that we interviewed have died in the last 20, 25 years. So there's no way to talk to them about these movies anymore. But again, these tapes exist. They've been sitting in storage, and so we're bringing them out.
Now, here's the thing. I sound like an infomercial, Matt, but you are the man of knowledge. What are listeners going to get out of this podcast that no other movie podcast will give them?
Well, it's these interviews. The show is going to be all about these interviews. You and I will be there to provide context, but I think we've talked about this and we've agreed the show is not about us. It's not about, our families or what movies we saw this week and what we thought of them. We're here to really just explain what's going on, what's happening in these interviews, because they might not make a lot of sense if you just listen to them without anyone explaining what they are. So that's going to be our role. We're probably going to talk a little bit more today than we will in future episodes.
This is our origin story, Matt.
Yeah. We kind of need to establish, I think, what this world is and what it is you're listening to. And so we're going to take a little bit more time in this first segment.
But bear with us, right? Bear with us.
Yeah. Or don't. You can skip ahead.
Okay. Yeah, don't.
We won't be offended if you fast forward.
I might cry.
Well, he might be doing that anyway. We were interviewers. We were journalists interviewing movie stars, and this tape archive exists. We did it for 10 years, and we have access to these interviews, and we're going to be playing them in their entirety, unedited, unpolished. So, you're going to hear the screw-ups, you're going to hear the jokes that happened in the room. It's going to be as if you were there. Fly on the wall.
Fly on the wall, and the audio is going to... You listen to these interviews, Matt, they're very good quality, right? So they're actually going to really get some really good sound from this. I'm an audio nerd, so...
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that other people care about that so much, but yeah, you'll be able to hear them. That's the best part about a podcast you will be able to hear them.
Listeners, you will hear things on the show.
Yeah, we could use that as a slogan.
You will hear things on this podcast.
Yes.
But in all seriousness, you will hear some really great stories with each movie that we cover in each episode.
And in future episodes, we're going to talk about things like the out-of-town trips that we used to take, something that we call quote whoring. We were
right.
We were the
Never heard
ones-
of that, Matt. Never heard of the quote horn. I don't want to say.
Yeah.
Never heard.
We were the ones who were quoted all the time in the movie ads and the TV commercials and the print ads. You know, when somebody said pure magic, a must see, and you're like, who is this guy who said that? That was us. So we will tell those stories.
That still goes on, by the way, the quote horning thing.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah. I prefer quote sharing, quote giving.
Yeah, we were involved in the formation of the Broadcast Film Critics Association, who puts on the Critics' Choice Awards every year, which maybe you've seen on TV.
Right.
It was very different in the early years, so we will talk about that.
And you still go every year, right, Matt?
Yeah, most of the time.
Okay.
Most years.
Great.
You do too. I mean, that's...
I haven't been there in about 6-7 years.
Really?
I just don't like to get out of the house.
Now, why do I have memories of talking to you with those things?
Because your memory's clouded.
Oh.
It was some other less interesting person. Oh, no, I'm less interesting than that less interesting person. So we haven't seen each other about 7-8 years. That's the last time I went there. So, yeah, memories. There's going to be a lot of memories on the show, folks, and you're going to love it.
Well,
Is that another slogan?
I think, yes, there are going to be a lot of memories. I don't think we can promise they're going to love them.
So we're talking about press junkets.
Moving
on. I think what's good is even though our voices are really prominent with this opening segment / origin story, if this works, we're going to give you guys a lot of meat to the bone.
Well, yes. I recently cataloged the tapes.
Okay. That takes a while, right?
That we're going to be, it took a while. The tapes that we're going to be using to make the show out of.
Right.
And the grand total, we have 6,441 interviews.
Holy moly.
So
wait.
We could do this show for the next 20 years, like regularly, and not run out of material.
So we can have 20 years worth of episodes.
We could.
That's amazing. So
that will depend on you guys if anyone listens.
Yes, there will be people listening. To you, Matt, not me. Just want to tell you that. You're going to be the star of the show. The star of the show is the content.
I'm not sure how you manage that. If you guys just want to listen to me, then you'll have to cover up one ear.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
What I wanted to start this week with is what are junkets?
Okay. Well, what are junkets, man?
I don't remember.
I still don't. I'm still trying to process it.
We did it for 10 years, and I still don't quite understand it. Not entirely true. So we were the entertainment journalists, although we called ourselves junketeers.
Right.
Based off of Mouseketeers, I guess.
I don't even know who even invented it. It was.
Yeah, it's just something we've always said.
It still sticks.
We're the junketeers.
Yeah.
So the junket, the studios set this up.
Right.
And this would be, about a month before the movie opened?
Yeah, several weeks, yeah.
Yeah, just to give us time to kind of prepare our stories and have them ready to go on release day. Mm-hmm. We would all go see the movie because you can't interview the stars and the writer and the director unless you know what the movie is. So you have to see it. So they would show us these movies early. We would go to screening rooms or theaters and never any trailers. They would just show the movie. And so we would see that. And then a few days later, we would sit down with the talent. So the way that junkets work, they're generally 2 or 3 days. And most of that, I think, are TV interviews. So the actors, or like I say, the writer, the director, sometimes producers, they sit in a room and they do a whole bunch of 4-minute interviews. They might do 30 in a day.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's too much.
It's really hard. And in fact, many of them have complained to us at the tables of how hard this weekend is. You know, how their throats are scratchy, and it's kind of mind-numbing because to a certain extent, it's kind of the same interview over and over again because everyone always asks the same questions.
Right.
And it's a challenge because every time you're asked a question, even if you've heard it 10 or 12 times already that day, you still have to act like it's the first time you've heard it and react as if it's new and try to give your answer as if it's fresh.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's not easy. But that's TV. And where we participated was we were radio junketeers. And we were part of the print radio tables. And those worked very differently.
Right.
Those interviews were 20 minutes long. And so I think the obvious questions did get asked, but then there would be another 15 minutes to fill. And that's when we would start to ask other things, off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. the talent would often say to us how much more they enjoyed doing print and radio tables than doing TV,
Of course, yeah.
because TV was just a kind of a slog. But then they would come to us and we would ask them different questions and they would feel more engaged. Now, the way it would work is it would generally be, about 4 or 5 hours in total, I guess.
Right.
Maybe it just felt that way because we got there early to set up and get our space and stuff.
Hey, listeners, we'd have to get to get a good space at the radio table. Let's say the interview started at, 10 o'clock in the morning. We would have to get there 9 o'clock in the morning just to set up our equipment and, most importantly, get a good seat at the table.
Well, most importantly, to go get the free breakfast.
Don't mention that. That's Matt's
that's-
gonna cut that off because I.
That was what was important to me.
Okay, that's the truth. The breakfast was very important as well, but also getting a good.
The most important meal of the day.
It's true. The junket meal is most important. The junket breakfast.
The trick?
What's the trick? To what?
You eat your food before the interview starts and not during.
Okay, so Matt, is that's a shot to the bow or the bow? Shot to the bow to fellow colleagues who would eat during the interview. Hence, the audio would be really bad. The clickety clanking of the
Right, the fork hitting the plate.
yes. Horrible.
Yeah, it didn't happen too often, but it would.
Right, and so Matt, you were talking about the main difference between the print
Yes.
and radio.
Yeah, well, to describe what this was, however many people were participating in the junket, let's say there were 6 people, like 4 actors and then the writer and then the director. So you had 6 people from the movie who were going to do this junket. Then they would set up 6 tables, 6 different rooms in a hotel, usually near each other, just consecutive rooms. And then they would disperse us evenly into those rooms. So
Right.
there might be 8 to 10 people in each room, and we would sit at these round tables, which was why these were called round table interviews. And they would bring the talent, one to each room, and they would be there for 20 to 30 minutes, and then the talent would get up and walk to the next room.
Right.
So the journalists would stay at the table, and we would just get people rotated in, which was helpful for us because we had a lot of equipment,
Yes.
and
A lot of
microphones
mics
and our
and
tape
machines.
recorders and stuff. So if we had to move, it would take a long time for us to reset up in each room.
Right.
So we stayed where we were, and the talent rotated. And if there were 6 rooms, then probably 4 of them would be print and 2 of them would be radio.
Exactly, and those look to provide daily context today. Those radio tables, round tables, don't even exist. They're mixed. Everyone's mixed in. So this is a really sweet spot. To even get one radio round table is a miracle today.
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about this before, that they don't really do roundtables much anymore. This is really kind of
Right.
the era ended. I mean, we were there during the height of it, and now it's mostly press conferences.
Mostly, yeah, and they still, like Matt was saying, they still occasionally will do a round table, but that's for the smaller films.
Yeah.
And-
This world that we're showcasing kind of doesn't exist anymore.
Right. For example, with the first episode, we're spotlighting Men in Black. And if Men in Black was released today, folks, you'd have a TV day, and then you'd have maybe a press conference if the print and radio and online people were lucky enough to get sound. That's the way
And the
would
press
break down.
conference would probably be a half hour long, and it would have everybody participating sitting at a table together and kind of talking over each other's answers.
Right. And within several hours, that press conference, the audio will be uploaded onto how many websites or
YouTube.
or YouTube. Like, yeah, right, exactly, Matt. So really, you're not going to get really exclusive material, and B, it's just really bad coverage all around.
Yeah, well, you've got the people talking over each other. We did occasional press conferences
course.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And my impression of the difference between a round table and a press conference is a round table is like an intimate conversation where, we're asking questions, but then we can ask follow-up questions like, oh, that's interesting. So does that mean such and such? And then they talk some more on the subject. And press conferences were more like Q&As. They were not conversations. They were one person stands up, asks a question, they get an answer, and then somebody else stands up and asks the question.
Right.
So there was no real flow to it.
And also, there's a big difference between print roundtables and radio roundtables. Not just, I think, in an audio level, but also I think there's more of a flow in the radio table as well.
Well, it's hard to say. The main difference, I think, between radio and print, well, I guess 2 differences. One is we had really good equipment, and so we had these really expensive microphones, and then we all had tape recorders in front of us, or recorders, whatever. And the print people would have these tiny little dictaphone things. Like they didn't care about sound quality because they weren't broadcasting anything. They just had to hear what was said, and then they typed it up. So ours had to sound really good, and theirs didn't. In our rooms, we had to turn off the air conditioning, so we're all sweating bullets, but it made too much noise, and our microphones picked up that sound, so we had to have it off.
That would frustrate some talent, understandably, when they'd come in and they'd feel that the room is a little bit musty for their own good, so...
Yeah, kind of warm, and, we've been sweating for a couple of hours in it. But it had to be that way because we needed the sound quality. This other huge difference, I think, between radio and print is that in the radio rooms, you couldn't laugh out loud. You couldn't make noise. You had to be careful not to cut off the end of their sentence. You couldn't talk when they were talking.
Or say, like if you're talking right now, Matt, we can't do the uh-huhs at all, even after they're done.
Yeah, it's got to be absolutely quiet. And the reason for that was because every person who was recording at that table was going to take that tape back to their offices and use the tapes for different things. And it had to be absolutely clean. And a lot of them were pretending that they were one-on-one interviews, even though they weren't.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have your voice on the answer. You couldn't talk when they were talking at all. And if anyone ever slipped from that, you would get a lot of dirty looks from the room. Mm-hmm. And anytime a print person, a poor, unfortunate print person wound up in the radio room, man, they would get jumped on from the first time they made a noise.
In all fairness, the first couple of times because I've been doing this since 91, and I was a Daily Bruin columnist. I do junkets then, but then I had to transition to radio in 93. The first couple of times I was very shaky because you couldn't make any noise. It was so intimidating to go into the radio room.
Oh, yeah.
So.
No, I mean, people were very, very strict about it, and you slipped and they would be furious because you just ruined a bite.
Yeah. I ruined a couple of bites on my first couple of get-goes. Did you slip in easily?
Well, I was so intimidated that I think for probably the first 6 months, I never even opened my mouth. Mm-hmm. I hit record and then sat there and let other people work. And I was trying to learn the ropes and watch them and see how they were doing it. And I didn't want to mess up. I was so scared about that I just didn't even participate.
Right.
Which was fine. I mean, as long as you come back to the office with interviews on your tape, then you're good. You didn't actually have to ask questions. You could skate by, and there were a lot of people who did. But it was more fun to ask questions and to play the game and be a part of it.
I think we should really give a little bit of a shout out to the people who were part of this universe with us, and there's a lot of people we want to thank before we get into our first interview.
I mean, for 10 years, we both saw these people probably more than we saw our own families.
Oh, come on. Yeah. And how many weeks did we have off on a weekend? Listeners, we probably, look, this is not complaining, but this is just straight facts. We probably had 2 or 3 weekends off in a 52-week cycle.
Well, I used to tell people, and I mean, this was absolutely true, we would see 4 to 6 movies a week and then spend every weekend just talking to all the people who had made those movies.
Right.
And that was our lives. I mean, that was our social lives. I mean, there isn't time for anything else. And it was always this group of people who were at every screening, and we would go out of town and we would see them all on the plane and we would see them all at the hotel, and we were all just joined at the hip. And this isn't a complete list because there were a lot of people who would come in for maybe 4 or 5 months or whatever, and then they'd disappear. There were people who were interns who would sit at the tables with us, and people who didn't necessarily ask a lot of questions.
Like me?
Well, you asked a lot of questions. We both did. You're going to hear us on these old tapes.
Oh, nice.
But there's a lot of other people, and they're like a regular cast of characters. They're going to be on our shows a lot. You're going to hear them a lot. You won't necessarily know their names, but you'll start to get used to their voices. But I wanted to just give a quick laundry list, and this may be a little dull, but I'll go fast.
You don't have to go fast. You can go nice and slow. Wait, that's another podcast I'm working on.
I keep hearing that. Why does everyone keep saying that to me?
Wow. Okay.
All right, so let me just do this list. Howard Benjamin, Joey Berlin, Ron Brewington, Maury Cartel, Bonnie Churchill, Laurie Creamy, Kathy Kogan, Ari Fishbach, Laura Gross, Bob Healy, Barry Krechik, Ann Lieber, Shep Morgan, Gail Murphy, Louise Palanker, Leo Quinones, Dara Revel, Mike Reynolds, Alan Silverman, Cameron Turner, Dave Weber, Paul Wonder.
Let me tell you something. It is a laundry list of names. all of these people ask really good questions during those interviews.
Yeah, we owe them a debt of gratitude. I think the reason that these shows are going to be as good as they are is because these interviewers were as good as they were.
I wasn't very good, though.
No, well, you were fine.
Okay, thanks.
I mean,
He threw me a bone. Listeners, he threw me a bone. I was horrible.
You were there.
I was there. I was there, folks.
You were definitely there.
Okay, but we have to really give a little bit of a shout out to this archive of 6,441 interviews.
Yeah, and we have to thank Laura Gross from LEG Productions. That's my old boss. That's who I worked for during these years. And she is letting us use these interviews, which is extremely nice of her.
Yeah.
If you guys wanted to license them for anything, talk to her.
Okay, cool. And what about the jingle jangle that leads off our show? Is jingle jangle a pejorative? I meant that as a compliment.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't know either.
There's a little song that starts out our show.
That's better.
And it was provided by the band Venice, and we definitely want to thank them.
And you love their music.
Yeah. I highly recommend their music. Everyone should go check out VeniceTheBand.com, although not right now because you're listening to a podcast.
Oh, really?
So write it down. Go check them out later. I've said to Greg, each episode is going to start out sounding really, really professional for about 8 seconds, and then the two of us are going to open our own stupid mouths and ruin it.
It'll go folks, it'll go downhill in the opening segments when we do the intros. We'll be quicker next time. This is our origin story.
Right.
But the most important stuff is the content that we're going to provide you. I think the first batter up, can we talk about it a little bit?
Yeah.
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
By the time MIB was rolling around in 97, D'Onofrio was already not an A-list actor, but a really solid character actor. He established himself already in, I believe, Mystic Pizza. A year before that, in 1996, he started in this indie drama called The Whole Wide World with Renee Zellweger. I mean, obviously, post-MIB, you guys know Vincent from his work with Law & Order Criminal Intent for almost 10 years, or 10 years, I believe.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, as Kingpin in Daredevil. I really...
That's who I mostly know him as now.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, he was a really, really good villain in Daredevil. He was Wilson Fisk, otherwise known as the Kingpin.
Yes.
And he was the main villain in season 1, but he came back in season 2, and I think we're not done with him
yet. Yeah, I really love that series. I love D'Onofrio because he reminds me of one of these descendants of the Brando, Montgomery Clift, James Dean Method E school of acting. And during the interview, you're going to listen to him he talks about a couple of movies that were coming up, right?
Yeah, he talks a little bit about the Newton Boys and about Boys Life 2, which are films that I don't think had come out at the time of this interview, but he had already shot them or he was working on them, and so they were on his mind. And that was a regular thing. We would ask people, what else are you working on, or what else do you have coming out? Mm-hmm. And we did that, I think, mostly because we weren't sure we were going to get them again for the next movie.
Right.
So, I mean, if we had a big-name star and we could ask him about 2 or 3 movies, and then if we didn't get him again later and those movies came out, we could go back to this interview and then pull the different bite from it.
I just want to really quickly mention this before I forget and may never mention. I like a really great word from the radio roundtables that I learned as a journalist or reporter is the word evergreen. Okay, listeners, the word evergreen in radio terms means when you do an interview, and let's say you're interviewing talent A and they have Men in Black, don't spend 29 minutes out of the 30 minutes just talking about MIB. You need evergreen material that will last for years to come, not just per that movie. So a lot of these interviews you're going to hear are evergreen questions, which makes the actual content interesting.
And these are stories that still pertain today.
Yeah, it's a really introspective, good interview.
So why don't we get to it? Ladies and gentlemen, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Way to close, Matt.
Always be closing.
Okay.
So, this is the role you can't resist, or how do you get talked into getting psyched up for a character?
Well, Barry came to me and asked me if I'd be interested. And I've always, I wanted to work with him, with Barry. So we discussed how it might be approached, and I just could tell right away that Barry was going to let me bring my ideas to it. Maybe stuff that wasn't scripted, but stuff we could add, and not as far as dialogue, but as far as characterization of it and the way it might be in my mind rather than in the script. And the attraction was to work with Barry and to have that freedom to do something. Playing villains is it's not like my most favorite role to play, but I depending on the villain, and I like it, as long as I can try to do something that's somewhat original, although it's very hard to be original these days. But as long as I have the freedom to at least experiment a little bit and, you know, push it just a little bit. You know, you can't push it too far with studio films, you know, but you can... if you're working with a director like Barry in a company like this, it happens to be a good one, and they let me have freedom. That was the attraction.
That actually looked like it might have hurt.
The makeup?
And the walk.
The makeup there was nothing fun about the makeup, except for spending 7 hours a day with Rick Baker, who's a great guy to hang out with. But there's nothing fun about it at all. I mean, they would call me in at 3, and 3 in the morning, and we'd be in makeup for about 7 hours, sometimes 9 hours, and then I'd work 9 hours after that. So.
But you're not necessarily, I mean, you've played bad guys before, certainly, but this is the blockbuster of the summer in everybody's opinion as we see it and we see the other ones. And you're chosen as the big bad villain. I mean, that's an interesting choice, but it's got to be a positive one for you as well.
Well, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I'm not quite sure.
Well, were you kind of surprised when they said, we want you to play the villain of this incredibly huge summer movie?
I'm not sure. I think that Barry was the only one that wanted me to play the villain. I mean, I don't know about anybody else wanting me to play the villain unless you've talked to people that I haven't. I don't know much about Sony or Columbia. I just know that Barry came to me, and I went to his house, and we had some dinner, and I liked him, and we did it. Am I surprised that it's going to be a blockbuster? You know, Barry is an incredible designer. You know, he designs a film, and if anybody can make one of these kind of films work, it's certainly him. So I'm not surprised about it.
Once the makeup's done, what's the toughest part of this performance for you?
I guess the toughest part was there was always an interesting thing about making it funny and scary at the same time. So playing with that, within the boundaries of that, of how far you can go as far as you didn't want to make him so funny he wasn't threatening, you know, and you didn't want to make him so scary it was just like an out-and-out scary monster villain kind of guy. Because it's very close. It could have gone Frankenstein or, you know, Laurel and Hardy. You know, it goes either way. And so I was trying to find you know, Laurel and Hardy meets Frankenstein kind of thing. Yeah.
There was that physical element to it. You mentioned that, you know, working with the character, you didn't have as much dialogue to depend on. How comfortable were you slipping into physical comedy like that?
I'm very comfortable slipping into anything that's physical. And so whether it's comedy or drama or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. It's part of for me, it doesn't matter. It's part of the job. You know, you know your composition within the structure of the story that you're telling, and you play it out. So, but the physical stuff is always an attraction to me. I've always done bizarre, weird roles that sometimes go over really good and sometimes they don't, you know, but I've always tried to push it with the physical stuff. I enjoy that. And sometimes I don't move at all when I'm playing characters. So, you know, it depends on the role.
Is it frustrating at all when a film like Whole Wide World gets such a limited release that, you know, only about 150 people in the country get to see it?
Yeah.
And
more than 150 people got to see it, but
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the work is so good. I mean, do you, as an actor, is that?
No, you know, you make a film like The Whole Wide World, you don't expect it to be in the arena that a film like Men in Black is in. So you also don't make a film like that. We didn't produce that film, and I didn't act in it to make any money off it. We did it because we wanted to tell the story. It's a different thing, you know. You do it because you want to tell the story. You do it for all the corny stuff, for all the artistic stuff, you know, not so you can be a villain and a bad guy in a big summer blockbuster. It's a completely different arena. We make that film for you guys to see, for the critics to see, and for the people to see, and to tell the story, and hopefully get critically well received, which we did, and be able to make another one with maybe a little more money that might be able to expand to a more broad audience after that. It's no disappointment. at all. In fact, it worked exactly the way we wanted it to, and we were happy about it.
How tight was the script for Men in Black? Was there much room for playing around?
Early on, it wasn't so tight. When I was first approached by Barry with it, it wasn't so tight. There was a lot of ideas in Barry's head and in the writer's head that hadn't been put on paper yet. So I really didn't take the script so seriously at first. Barry asked me not to, and because him and the writer Ed Solomon were continuing work on it. But the ideas that Barry had, the story that he told me about the script and his approach, his design of it, and what I might bring to it interested me. There was a lot of room for play, yeah, a lot.
Did he have a thumbnail description of what he was trying to accomplish with this? And there's that Casablanca without Nazis line that's in the movie that wrote down. But was there anything that he used to?
I don't know. Barry has his mind is much too complex for me to try to tell you. I mean, I don't know. All I know is how he's very clever, and he sold me on doing it, and I don't know what he had in mind when he was doing it. If he had some kind of secret in mind, or
I'm sorry for interrupting. You did say that he gave you a lot of freedom to develop the character. What were some of the specific things that you thought of to really enhance Edgar and to define him further for you?
Well, the voice, the way he moves, all the physical stuff. Some of the makeup stuff that when Rick and I were doing it, we were figuring out what would work and what wouldn't, and how he would look, and mainly it was the character himself, the way he moves, the constraint thing. That wasn't none of that was in the script.
How did you wind up with all that? The movement, the voice.
I was just thought of it.
Well, I mean, what was the thought process?
Well, it's a fairly simple thing. I knew that the end monster was going to be, 12 feet high or something like that, and I know that I'm only 6'4", so 12 foot high packed into 6'4", there would be some kind of constraint in moving, and then it was how could you display that so people would understand.
But why did he have so much trouble fitting into the skin? I mean, besides he's the alien that he is bigger, but all the other aliens were fine in their skin, even though they were probably not quite fitting into it either.
I don't know, other than that's the choice that I made.
Because I didn't understand.
You should ask aliens, because they know.
Bug, and the others were other kind of aliens.
Is that usually the way it goes, though? I mean, do you, in your other
I was so confused.
In your other experiences, though, you're talking about Barry Sonnenfeld, and do you find that you have that kind of creative license, or how different is the experience with other directors?
It's always the same. I mean, everybody is different. I haven't met a director like Barry. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different personality and works different ways. You can just tell a good director by his if they're quick thinking and they have a good sense of humor, and they don't come up with too many metaphors. And I've been very lucky, I guess. I just assume that they all the directors that I will work with and have worked with will be open to all my ideas. I think, also I'm in a kind of different situation than like Will or Tommy Lee. I've been a character actor for a long time, and although I've done leads in films, but I've also approached my leads as character roles, and I'll continue to do so. I get hired because I'm that kind of actor, that can come in and do a part and leave. For a movie like Men in Black, the responsibility of it being a success is hardly on me. So I have more freedom, I think, in my mind. Also, I never have gotten pressures from studios from the beginning of my career, from the higher elements to change my performance in any way, to alter it, to stifle it in any way. I've had total freedom, and I hope I continue to have it.
Since
What
becoming
kind
a
of character
producer,
is Doc in?
Sorry.
Step on each other.
since becoming a producer, have you altered your acting style at all? I mean, do you find that now that you know more about the production end of the business, do you tend to be a little bit?
I act faster. Yes.
That's what I was going for.
Yes, I know you were. Yeah.
What kind of character is Doc in the Newton Boys? Because this is based on real people.
Yeah. Doc is one of the brothers of 3 other brothers who robbed banks. He's probably the main soldier. You know, Willis is the lead brother who Matthew McConaughey plays, and who leads the gang. He's the gang leader, and I would say Doc is his soldier with a sense of humor. Nothing bothers him at all. You know, when he insults people, he just walks up about this far from them and doesn't look them in the eye and stands next to them and tells them how they feel and then how he feels, and then he walks away. He's very threatening in a kind of very low, smooth, dangerous way.
Is there a particular burden or challenge when you're playing a historical character? Granted, this isn't somebody who is,
In this film, the only challenge is not to kill the camera crew with the shotguns when you're firing them. You know, there's lots of horse riding and stuff, but I like that. I like to do that. It's not a heavy drama. It's a Western. Not that Westerns can't be heavy dramas, but this particular Western isn't. This is more on the lines of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where you're allowed to enjoy the sense of breaking the law. You know.
Boys Life 2 is still working its way around the country, and it's about.
And I'm really proud of that, actually. Yeah.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. I mean, I don't know what the deal. It was made originally as an independent small film, and then it gets lumped into a larger film that starts making this circuit. I wondered if you were well with that or not well with it, or.
Well, I wouldn't have done the character if I wasn't well with being involved in a gay film or that world. You know, I was very happy that it found something to attach itself to, so it can travel around and people can see it. You know, it's very interesting. It was just in Austin, Texas, that Boys Life 2. You know, and I'm just so happy about it that I did that film.
Well, how'd you get involved in it?
The director came to my door in the morning and forced his way into my house and convinced me to do it.
Okay, to take me, I guess.
What about Austin? You started to talk a little bit about it being in Austin. What about that particular area?
Well, I mean, Texas is Texas. You know, there's such. On one hand, you have these intellectuals and artists. On the other hand, you have like cowboys and cowgirls. You know, it's the mix is really odd. So I find it odd anyway. I find it one of the most uncomfortable places to be in the world so far. But because you never really know whether you're going to have to, talk about horses or talk about, a book that you read. It's a completely different spectrum. I find it really strange. And all the time people walk up to you on the street and they say things to you, and somebody might say, "Hey, you're the guy in that film, aren't you? Aren't you?" Like that, And so then, the next minute somebody walks up and, "Oh, I see, how are you doing?" It's very strange. Yeah, it's very... And so, but the people that would be caught in a theater seeing Boys Life 2 not knowing at all what it's about, because it was playing at a Dolby, which is a university theater, which shows a lot of different types of films. So you're getting like these guys, certainly extreme, like cement heterosexuals, going to see a gay film. Very strange things they would say to me. They'd actually ask me, "So do you think he really slept with a man, this guy?" You actually think that he might have not? I mean, I saw him kiss the black fella, but would he have actually? It's very strange.
Is there time for stage for you now, or is it something that's just too much of a... I realized your heart is on stage where you started, but...
Yeah. I just did Tooth of Crime in New York, Sam Shepard's play. When did I do that? 3 months ago? About 3 months ago. I don't know, if a guy like Sam Shepard, he asks you to do a play, you'll do it. If somebody asks me to do a play, I'll do it. I certainly feel comfortable doing it. I have a daughter to support and a wife, and it doesn't make you a lot of bread, but sometimes it's impossible to turn it down.
What is the comfort zone with your career in terms of being asked to do things or wanting to do things or having a period of time where you're not working and want to work? How are things going in that way?
Well, I have all the free time that I need. I mean, I can choose to do a film or not do a film, or I could work one film after another, which is what I've been doing lately. It's I'm 37 years old. I have all of my. I feel the most creative I've ever felt before. So it's like I'm going through this thing where I'm going to be working all the time until I get the feeling that to take a break or something. Maybe when I feel less creative or something.
Okay, thank you very much.
It is nice, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're great.
Okay, now we're back. This is our first interview. What did you think? How'd it go? It was a good interview, right, Vincent?
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't our first interview, but it was the show's first interview.
The show's first interview. It was a very interesting talk with Vincent. There's some really interesting postscripts that you really wanted to mention regarding Vincent.
I made a little note here. There was a part in the interview where I had asked him what the thought process was for playing the creature, and it was Kathy Kogan who asked why weren't other aliens comfortable in their skin as opposed to him. And it got kind of a funny answer, and Vincent didn't know what to do with that, and we all kind of teased her a little bit. But I just wanted to point out that the question was valid, because what happened a lot of times in these interviews is not everything that we said was a question. Sometimes it would just be a little comment or a little aside, or someone would make a joke or whatever. And then the interviewee would take that and run with it and would say something more, and we would continue to get a good soundbite, or maybe a second half of the previous soundbite. It would just pull more out of them.
Right.
So it was kind of anything goes. That was the interview style. You could, there was no wrong way to go, really, when it comes to participating. You just wanted to keep them talking. So even though it kind of sounded like, why would she say that? That was weird. It really wasn't. And she's a very good interviewer. And I mean, you'll hear her adding value to these things as the shows go on. So, shout out to Kathy wherever you are.
Yeah, shout out. Speaking of good interviews, I think, in my opinion, one of my favorite interviews from the 90s, director-wise, was Barry Sonnenfeld, because by this point of MIB in 1997, we had known Barry, interview basis. He actually gives really great interviews, responds to our questions, wasn't really closed off, and we had actually a solid journalist working relationship by the time we got him for Men in Black.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm trying to remember where he was in his career at this time. I mean,
amazing.
Obviously he had started as a cinematographer, and
right.
I mean, he worked on a lot of Danny DeVito films. I think Throw Mama from a Train.
Billy Crystal, good movie.
Yeah, holds up, definitely.
Yeah.
Misery, he was the cinematographer on Misery. I mean, you're our resident IMDb guy, so I mean,
don't you call me an IMDb, sir? Even though I'm looking straight at the page.
Greg, you have an amazing memory. Tell me what you remember off the top of your head.
Well, off the top of my IMDb head, I'll tell you. Did you know that he was the DP for the Coen Brothers film Miller's Crossing? So he has a beautiful visual eye.
Okay, I did not know that. I probably knew it at some point, but I think it's been replaced with my son's algebra homework.
Very good, very good. This is genuine laughter. Look, Misery, like you were saying, Misery, that's another top DP credit from Sonnenfeld. But then by the time we had interviewed Sonnenfeld in 97, he'd already directed The Addams Family, For Love or Money. That was a movie with Gabriel Anwar and Michael J. Fox that I actually dug. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah.
Also released in 93, sir, was Addams Family Values. Okay, and before Men in Black, we had Get It Shorty. Get Shorty was one of his biggest ones, released in 95. So this is providing context to this next interview with Barry.
Yes, and the note that I made is when he first comes in, he's fascinated by all the different tape recorders and DAT machines that we have sitting around the table. And you just have to remember, he comes from cinematography, so obviously he's a tech nerd. So he got very excited, I think, by the Tascam that he saw. And I think he liked that somebody had a DAT machine, which was very new in those days.
Was that you, Matt Levitz, or Mr. Levitz?
I don't think that was me yet. I think we were still on cassette at that time.
Okay, I never had a DAT machine. I just went from analog, which was my Marantz recorder, a very expensive Marantz recorder. I went from that to a mini disc, which we might cover later down the road. You never had a mini disc?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay, sorry.
No.
Sorry, folks.
I think that would be really boring.
Very boring. I am very, very boring. But you know who's not boring is Barry Sonnenfeld. And you're going to close this segment. Can you close it?
I think you just did.
Wow.
Good transition, man.
Thank you, sir. Here we go.
You would expect that of me.
Of course.
I'm of the opinion that we all kind of blend together.
No. No, there are certain rooms that you walk into and you go, this is going to be sad.
Well, I'm glad I could exemplify that for you.
No, so we got a Tascam, but that's not, is that a Tascam with high 8?
It's that. No,
it's that. Because,
Barry, I don't know what it is.
Because, Tascam does a lot anyway, okay. What else do we have? Oh, we got several DATs.
Sony.
I got a couple of those, sure.
Yeah, take a couple.
Okay.
What's the newest gimmick you bought?
35 millimeter double system projection in my basement with Sony SDDS, DTS, and SRD.
Right. Sony give you a deal?
Define
No,
No home should be without one.
Sony charged me slightly over retail.
Even the discount is kind of slightly over retail.
I know. Yeah, I have this VIP card, which means like you're a VIP, so you must have money. So pay more than what you could get it for at J&R Music World.
Will Smith had a comment about this kind of humor being harder to do in many ways than the slapstick, big, broad humor. How do you deal with that when you're dealing with the actors to try to keep them focused and make it funny?
Okay, I have to ask you guys a question. Do you want me to incorporate your question in my answer when we do this interview, or no? Okay, fine. Okay.
We do want you to move a little closer to the mics.
Okay.
Thank you.
For me, it's the only kind of comedy I know. So it'd be hard for me to do slapstick comedy or big, broad, guys vomiting. Although I have had people vomit in movies I've shot and directed. But anyway, for me, I like my style of comedy, if I have a style, is to sort of underplay the comedy and never let anyone see the comedy, which is why Tommy was such a perfect choice for me to be the straight man, It's not unlike Abbott and Costello or Burns and Allen. You don't want two comedy guys for a buddy movie. Maybe that's why, the Robin Williams, Billy Crystal thing is sort of interesting. In a way, they're the same guy. So for me, it's always easy, and I know if the comedy's working right away, and I'm a stickler for sticking to that comedy. I remember one take Tommy did something that seemed almost like he was trying to be funny. And I would say to Tommy, Tommy, that was great. Let's just do one even a little flatter, more like a GI kind of guy. And Tommy turned to Will and said, Barry noticed that a little bit of spontaneity and humanity entered my performance, but don't worry, Barry, I'll get rid of it right away. And the next take, he was flat and, great. So for me, it's an easy comedy. I really liked the movie, actually, and it sort of surprised me because it did work out the way I wanted it to, which is good. Yeah.
Our relationship with Tommy Lee is something less than cordial.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering how he is to work with, how he takes directions, especially as a straight man for a comedy.
Well, in a way, I had a perfect situation, which was I had a fish out of water. I had a guy who had to trust that I knew what I was doing because Tommy very much hadn't done comedies before and had to trust that I knew what was funny. And here are many things about Tommy. Tommy hadn't been in comedies. When you do a comedy, it's hard not to get in a better mood. A chemical thing happens. Tommy was in a great mood. He would make Will Smith and I laugh hysterically. He also trusted me and Will that we knew what was funny. The other thing that happened was, by the way, if you talk to the electronic journalists that were here yesterday who interviewed Tommy, they'll tell you they were shocked and how nice and friendly and calm he was. he loves the movie. He's in a comedy, and he's funny and he's joyful for being there. You know what? Gene Hackman was in a good mood most of the time on Get Shorty, and he's someone who also could get grumpy if left to his own devices. So it was great, and I was never. He trusted me that when I said flatter, that he was flatter. Also, the other thing about Tommy as a comedy actor, he was built to play comedies. He's got a huge head, a small body, and he talks incredibly quickly. He's the only actor I've ever had to say, let's do one take slower. Because comedy is all about pacing. And Tommy is the fastest talking actor on the planet. So for me, it was a truly great experience.
Are you willing to accept the responsibility if Tommy all of a sudden decides he wants to remake old Jerry Lewis movies now that he's funny?
That's not funny. Yeah. See, I was going to tell you one other thing, but I'll remember it later. Oh, yeah. In Batman Forever, Tommy was trying to be funny. That was a mistake, because you had Jim Carrey being funny. If Tommy had not tried to be funny, or if he was directed not to be funny, it would have been a much, I think, stronger performance. Also, Tommy was never in competition with Will. One of the other great things that happened that I really am lucky about is Will was finishing Fresh Prince and came onto the movie 2 weeks late. So Tommy owned the set. It was his set. So already Tommy had a foot up. I mean, it's all psychological and stuff, but I think that also helped tremendously for Tommy's self-confidence.
In Addams Family, you had some effects.
Yeah.
But you've never worked with effects on this scale before.
No.
What was, again, keeping in mind the pacing and the comedy that you were talking about, what was the biggest challenge there?
The biggest challenge on this movie by far was the year in post-production, because the actors were great. They understood comedy. They understand. We have a mutual language. A director can say to an actor, faster, and he knows what that means. He knows it doesn't mean run around a room faster. It means say the words faster, or pace it up, or flatter. It means, let's see less acting. The problem is, I then spent a year of post-production with Industrial Light and Magic teaching computer graphics animators how to be funny. And they're just not funny, and we don't even have the same language, because I would say, guys, it just looks like he's floating. It's not funny because he's got to look like he has, weight, and I would sort of go on, and then it would be the silence and some guy on the video screen, because I was in East Hampton and there in San Rafael. So some guy would say, so you're saying you want more secondary muscle movement? And I would say, is that funny? If it is, absolutely. They said, well, we don't think that's okay. Let's go at it another way here. So, there are shots in the movie that were on board, on a computer, looked at twice a week by me in conference calls for 11 months. The shot where Will, near the end of the movie, gets punched by the guy we call Edgar Bug, the creature that Edgar becomes. We worked on that shot for 11 months, and I kept saying to them for 11 months, guys, let's just let him punch him. Because they had Edgar pushing him down, and and they kept saying, well, Will wasn't moving fast enough, and they had to, connect the speed of Will's movement to the animation. I said, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to work. Just give him a roundhouse. So after about 9 months of them saying it wouldn't work, and then they made me go up to San Rafael with Will and shoot a different shot against Blue, and that didn't work. So finally, they did what I asked, and it's funny, So the problem for me, the biggest challenge was, how do you get guys that spend all their lives at a computer screen who just don't know what's funny? How do you teach comedy? So that was hard for me. And the other thing that was hard was sort of trying to create aliens that looked unique with Rick Baker, because Rick was great, and I would say, Rick, don't give me what humans' vision of what an alien would look like, because they always look like humans. They have 2 eyes, they have a mouth. Let's not do any of that. So we do this great, unique stuff, and then I go, Well, how do I know where he's looking? All right, put the eyes back. Okay, but he's going to speak. All right, let's get. So it's very hard to create aliens. One of the things that I like about the movie is that they're not just bad aliens. They're, funny aliens and cute aliens and disgruntled worker aliens. Those are my favorite. The little worm guys, the skinny guys at the coffee room, because they're just jerks. They're just really jerks. They're sitting. They're never at work. So that was the challenge for me, was the computer graphics, really.
Talk about the dog alien, because that was like the prize of the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the first thing you need to know is we had 2 dogs, and we built special harnesses for them so that they could be held without being hurt, and no dog was hurt or annoyed in any way. The harder part was, as it turns out, we had hired 2 young male pug dogs. And it turns out that when you pick up a pug, they get an erection. So we had to train these dogs not to get erections. And, that was a lot of where the 8 months of training went into. I don't know what they did. Maybe showed it showgirls enough times so that it would, I don't know. But anyway, so the next thing that happened was that we were on the set, and, here's the truth. I always liked that scene from the time it was in the script, because it reminds me of the woman coming into the bar with the duck. This is what made me... No, with the pig. I've just given you the punchline. The woman comes into a bar. Yes, I did. Woman comes into the bar with a pig. The drunk says, "Hey, how am I doing so far with this joke?" The drunk says, "What are you doing with that?" What are you doing with the pig? No, then she says, "It's a duck, you fool." And then he says, right, so it is the duck. I was right to begin with. A woman comes into a bar with a duck. The drunk says, "Hey, what are you doing with that pig?" The woman says, "It's a duck, you fool." And the drunk says, "I was talking to the duck." So anyway,
comedy's very hard.
Now let me just say this. The scene in the movie is even better than that joke. But it's with Tommy Lee shaking down this pug dog. And what I liked about the movie, when I was hired, the movie took place all over the U.S., in Washington and Philly and everywhere but New York. And I said to Steven Spielberg and Walter and Laurie, I said, "Look, I want to direct this movie, but I want it to, A, take place in New York, because if aliens exist, they will feel most comfortable and blend in New York. I grew up in New York, and I still live outside of New York. And 2, Steven, I can't do what you do. I can't make a movie that looks like a movie you did. I can only make a movie that looks like I did. So what I want to do is I want to make The French Connection as a comedy with aliens." And Steven went, "I mean, how could you even compute that?" But to me, it made perfect. So Steven went, "Okay." So that pug scene is for me, Popeye Doyle with a guy, and why Tommy works is that he never acknowledges it's fun. Cut it out. Stop laughing.
Trying to laugh.
I'm sorry, I just think it was one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen.
It's such a cheap joke. Come on. There's not a dog food commercial on. There's not a Saturday morning commercial for anything that doesn't have a talking animal. But somehow when he's being confronted with Tommy Lee Jones, it's kind of funny, which is why he's perfect for the comedy.
When you talk about centering it in New York, you got some great digs in there.
Sure, cab drivers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I grew up with an alien. I didn't know she was an alien. I just thought she was a terrible mother. But until he died, and I know you all know this and don't want to hear mother stories again, but my mother could have been Vincent Gardenia's photo double if she shaved. And so I know, I tell you the same stories, but you hadn't heard that one, no. So for me, growing up in New York, one is the people there are so unique looking. That's why you can't fake LA for New York, because you can't get extras that look like New York extras, because none of the aliens, there are a few aliens out here, but a lot of them have left Sony. In any case, one is the people there look so unique, and that aliens would blend in. And second of all, There's like a street corner at 57th and 5th Avenue with an 8-foot-high cylindrical tank with a hose that goes into the ground with steam coming out of it. There's no name on it. What's going on there? But New Yorkers just accept it. They just accept anything because, so for me, New York is a perfect place. In fact, if we do a sequel, if the movie does, well enough to warrant a sequel, then I definitely will make New York even more of a character. And what's great is kids get all the visual stuff and big laughs, but seeing the movie with adults, it's very rewarding to hear adult laughter at like New York jokes and cab driver jokes. You cannot go into a cab in New York City and not think they're an alien. They don't speak the language. They don't look like humans. They drive insanely without any fear. They're aliens. So it was an easy target, but it worked.
Could you talk about the music a little bit? I wanted to. Will Smith obviously is important in that aspect, but there's also, you have Danny Elfman.
Yeah, Danny did a great score. I really liked the score, and it was interesting because what happens with the composer is they start to write a few cues, and you come over to their house and look at it against the picture. And initially, Danny was trying to help me with the comedy, and I said, Danny, I don't need help with comedy. I need help making the movie, manlier and bigger. But, like if someone got hit, Danny would go ding, ding. He was doing this sort of snare drum stuff, which he does really well. And he said, Tim would have wanted me to hit all these comedy moments. And I said, okay. So when you do, Superman, do that. But Danny did a great job because he made the movie sort of manlier and also very emotional. There are 3 scenes that we called the 60s scene where Dee gets neuralized at the beginning of the movie, because he screwed up shooting Mikey. When Tommy looks at his long-lost love from the 60s. And then when the ending, which we won't talk about on radio, and because it's too sexy. But in any case, those 3 scenes had a unifying sort of, melody. And it's very emotional for me, and I liked it. So Danny did a great job. And then from pre-production, I was trying to convince Sony to do a video, and with Will, because he was this rap artist and all that. And finally, in post, Will finally came around to realizing he should do it, and he did. And it's a really great song, and I like it a lot.
Before they take you out of here, can you talk about Wild Wild West?
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Will Smith is Jim West in Wild Wild West. You got a problem with that? No, it will be interesting, and I just never want to do a movie without Will, ever, because it will make money. And he's just a great guy, and he's inventive, and I think he can do this. And, we will acknowledge that he's black, and, but I think it's going to be a really great film, and it's going to be inventive and have action and adventure and comedy.
Why Wild Wild West?
I loved that movie. I loved the TV show growing up, and Will wanted to do it and gave me the script, and I loved the TV show. Will wanted to do it and gave me the script, so I couldn't say no, and I'm really excited about working with him.
Will you be one of the nice guys and offer Conrad a cameo?
Yeah, I'll offer Conrad a cameo. Yes, I will.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Well, he told us when Will was here, he said you came to him.
Really?
And said, I want you to play the part. And he said, don't you notice I'm black guy walking in the White House.
One of us is telling the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you should make him Jewish, and then it'll complete it.
That won't work. It's the Sammy Davis story. That's always a possibility.
Right.
Sorry about the MD player.
Right. Thanks, Barry.
And we're back. That was Barry Sonnenfeld, the director of Men in Black. A couple of things I think we wanted to say about that. There was a point where he was talking about Danny Elfman working with Tim Burton. And he said, when you do Superman, go do that. What he was talking about there was the movie Superman Lives, which Tim Burton was prepping back in, when was this, 1997?
Right.
The interview took place?
Yeah, 97.
Yeah. Back at that time, Tim Burton was getting ready to do a Superman movie. And do you remember who was going to play Superman?
Nicolas Cage?
Yep.
Wow, that would have been a great. I love Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, it would have been an interesting take. It fell apart. It never happened. I think Kevin Smith wrote a script at one point.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, can you imagine that? A Superman movie, Kevin Smith wrote the script, Tim Burton directing, Nicolas Cage playing Superman.
Lots of shots of Superman in a convenience store just riffing. That's it.
Yeah, that's the whole movie.
That's the whole movie, folks.
The budget was $15.
Very cool. Very cool.
No,
that
but
isn't.
It never happened. It fell apart. And that's actually some of what's fun, I think, about these interviews is you hear people talking about films that never happened. But at the time that they're talking about them, they were prepping them. They were getting them ready. They were excited. And, films that never were.
I also thought from this interview that was interesting from Barry is it took 1 full year of post-production. You know more about production and editing than I do, Matt. But for something like MIB, you watch it, you enjoy it. But you just, as a viewer, I just don't realize how much work is put into after the film is done.
Well, there's a lot of special effects. Obviously there were no aliens on set. They had to do that later.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, yeah, it takes a while. I wanted to say at the end of this interview, there's like a Will Smith reference. I think they're saying like, okay, coming up next is Will Smith. We switched the running order. We're going to do that every week. We got him in a certain order that wasn't very necessarily paced very well. We're switching it up here. We want to end big and have peaks and valleys. So we're going to do Linda Fiorentino next. At the time that we did this, it wasn't this order.
You mentioned peaks and valleys, Matt. By this time in 97, Linda Fiorentino was at her peak as an actress. Before then, she had starred in Jade. We all love Jade, right? Directed by William Friedkin. That was a genuine laugh. I love Jade. I love Jade.
I don't think
David
too many
Caruso.
people remember that one.
Okay, starring David Caruso. That was when David Caruso was an A-list star for feature films. That was his 95 movie, Jade. But she's mainly known for Dogma, directed by Kevin Smith, which would be released 2 years after Men in Black. Right. But before that, the one movie that really made her was the 94 film, The Last Seduction, that film noir thriller directed by John Dahl.
Yeah, that one I do remember. That was a really good movie.
Yeah, so...
But we haven't seen too much of her lately. Her latest IMDb credit is 2009, and before that, her next most recent was 2002. She really slowed down.
It's a shame. She has such a presence about her as an actor, I think.
Yeah, she's really good, and she was really likable. I remember when we sat down at her for this junket, as you guys are about to hear, I mean, she's very personable. She shoots from the hip. I mean, she wasn't holding anything back.
Well, that's it. Shoots from the hip. I don't know if that's a positive or negative, but for you listeners, when you listen to this, I'm not giving away spoiler alerts, but she's really uncommonly frank and candid, which you're not going to get from a lot of people on either side of the microphone.
Yeah, I remember liking her a lot. I miss watching her on the screen. Linda, we miss you. Come back. Make some more movies.
Come back, Linda Fiorentino, and here she is.
What was your first thought when this idea was broached to you?
My first thought when Barry Sonnenfeld came to me, I mean, he called my agent and said, I want her to do this movie. And so I met with him at the St. Regis in New York. And I don't even think I had read the script at that point. And I said yes. Because I love Barry's work. And, I had never done a flat-out comedy before. And I thought with those two guys... They have all the pressure, no risk comedy for me. And I thought it would be a lot of fun. And I had met Barry at a poker game prior to him offering me the film, where I promptly took him for $500. Thank you very much. And from that point on, I thought, maybe I'll get to work with him one day. We had a great time.
Yeah, he's the player of our group.
Joey's eyes.
Oh, you are? Yeah, he's thinking.
You said that.
Barry's a good poker player, but I still took him for $500.
What are you doing tonight?
Watching the Bulls game.
Well,
you
likes
said
basketball too, man.
You said,
I love basketball.
You said flat-out comedy. I think it's an interesting term because there's a certain flatness to the type of comedy. It's not big and broad. What's the challenge there in being funny and not acting funny?
Well, I had Will Smith, so I mean, he was the one who had to be funny. He had all the pressure. I mean, he's the one who has to be funny because that's what they're counting on him to be. So I can't imagine having to deal with that. And so for me, it was sort of a paid vacation, really, and just I had kind of a relaxed time of it, and I felt no pressure. It was a great experience for me.
Well, there was Barry, when he's here, told us a little anecdote about trying to get Tommy Lee Jones. There was one point where he tried to be funny, and he said, "Do it again, only don't be funny."
Don't try to be funny.
Were there instances like that? With that
Kind of for him and me?
Yeah, the kind of direction.
No, because I think what I do naturally, whether it's funny or not, is I'm very flat and monotone in my delivery usually anyway. I mean, some people consider The Last Seduction a dark comedy, so that's kind of in keeping with what Barry does anyway. So he would just say faster and flatter. That's what he would just say. So his he would direct us in terms of pace more than anything.
We'll talk about working with Tommy Lee Jones a little bit and Will Smith.
The contrast thereof. Well, lucky for me, most of my scenes were with Will and Vincent, so I didn't have to deal with a relationship with Tommy too much. He has his own way of working, and it doesn't really take into consideration other people. So that's all I have to say.
Both you and Will are from Philadelphia.
There's generous actors, and then there's selfish actors, but I don't think he means to be that way. I just think it's the way he is, and I make no judgment about it. It's just the way it is.
Both you and Will are from Philadelphia, I guess. Different neighborhoods, or
different neighborhoods.
But
Italian ghetto.
That's I was wondering.
I was born there, but we moved away. So, but yeah, that stays with you. I mean, we both grew up in schoolyards, basically, which would explain the chain link fence, wouldn't it?
Got a couple of other films.
It took you a minute for that.
Still haven't gotten it.
Because you didn't see The Last Seduction. If you saw The Last Seduction, you would get that joke.
Got a couple of other films that work on too. The Killer's Kiss.
No, is that in the bio or something? That was a movie that Mike Marcus bought for me when he was the head of MGM. He's not the head there anymore, so nobody cares about it. But the writer got a lot of money. So.
Kicked in the Head.
Kicked in the Head is a movie I did that Martin Scorsese produced. I don't want to talk about it. It was not a good experience.
When that happens, when it's not a good experience, how do you put it behind you?
You put it behind you very quickly. Move on. You just look forward to the next opportunity to make it better. He was just a first-time director and very inexperienced, and I did it as a favor to the producers, and I did it as a favor to October Films, which helped me. They helped me a lot in my career, so I don't regret doing it. I'm just unhappy with the final product, and I thought that the director was irresponsible to the actors, particularly since we all took no money.
How commonplace is it to actually be satisfied with the final product with filmmaking these days? Is it
how common?
Yeah, is it rare?
It's so rare. I mean, it's such a rare occasion where everything works together. I mean, like The Last Seduction and The Moderns were two films that I would say, everyone worked to the best of their ability, and it shows in the film. And you had a good time, and you walked away with new friends. They're few and far between, those experiences.
So why continue to do it?
It's what I do.
Okay, why do you do it then?
Yeah, why is it what you do?
Why do I do what I do?
Well, I mean, if it's so unrewarding as you're describing it.
It's not unrewarding. I mean, there's moments when it's incredibly more rewarding than anything I can think of doing. It's just that they're few and far between. I mean, for everyone.
Is there something you can do to change that in terms of, do you have aspirations to write the better roles, to direct a film and be that nice, cool director?
Yeah, I mean, I have projects I'm working on. It's a lot easier for me to get an acting job than it is for me to ask people for, millions of dollars to make the movie. So I try to be a part of things. Like a movie I did after Kicked in the Head, I thought was a good risk because they're the actors involved and it was an ensemble piece. And, I'm more than willing to take risks and take less money if I think it might be a good experience. So it's the experience of it that attracts me to it.
Is that one split?
Yeah, they're changing the title because I guess there's another movie about the same title. I don't know. It's untitled right now. It's coming out in the fall.
Body Count was another number.
Because the same thing. There was, and then it was called Thieves, and then Les Voleurs came out. So it's I don't think it's ever going to have a title.
But you said it's a nice ensemble piece.
It was me, Ving Rhames, John Leguizamo, David Caruso, and Forrest Whitaker, and that, the Yellow Pages I'll do with those guys. They're good actors.
Well, what kind of Yellow Pages is this? What's the story?
That story, it's about an art heist, and these guys are on the road, and I play a drifter that witnesses them killing a cop, and they have to kidnap me and take me with them. So it's us in the car for 2 hours. Hour and 40 minutes, I'm sure, by the time the studio gets done with it.
Have you seen Men in Black? Have you seen the final? What do you think of it?
I think it's as much fun to watch as it was to make, absolutely. And I think the spirit in which we made the film definitely comes through.
How much fun was it to make?
Too much fun. I was so guilt-ridden after this movie. I had a great time, and I met friends on that film that will be my friends for life, and it was a great experience all the way around, and I was happy to be a part of it.
If you weren't in this movie, is this the kind of film you'd go see?
No, that's a good question. I was thinking about that. It's not, I would not go see this. This is not a typical movie I would go to the movie theater to see, especially in LA where you have to find parking first. It's not a genre of film that I'm accustomed to going to at all.
So did it surprise you then when you found yourself enjoying it?
Oh, sorry. It's got very relaxed. When I found myself enjoying it.
When you found yourself getting into it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the thing about this movie is I thought the special effects were funny in and of themselves. I thought that was the genius of Barry Sonnenfeld, was that he found a way to make the special effects themselves funny. So it took a lot of the pressure off the actors to be funny, because even when the actors weren't on, the special effects were funny. And so, and I do have a new respect seeing what they do to make those things work, and watching that process, and I realize how much work goes into it and how much talent and skill. I have a new respect for it. But I was watching it, I was trying to watch it through the eyes of a child, like a teenager, like a young teenager, and realizing how cool the movie really is, and the kids are just going to love it. I have a stepson from my first marriage, and he's 13 years old, and he called me up and he said, I'm going to see this movie 6 times. I don't even care if you're in it. It had nothing to do with me being in it, and we're still really close, even though I'm not with his dad anymore. He just thought this was going to be the coolest movie of the summer, and I just thought, well, if that's a gauge, I think they'll be really happy.
It is definitely
You
a
should
13-year-old
tell-
boy movie.
Isn't it? Like
Yeah.
a 13-year-old boy movie? I think that's the target audience.
Linda, you should tell Barry that the effects were funny, because he went into a whole thing of how long and hard he had to work to talk to the technicians, the computer people,
Yeah.
to make them funny.
Yeah, because they don't think that way. They're just thinking technically, and I think that was like when he punches, the bug punches him. I laugh every time I see it. I think they're really funny.
For people who, like you, would not go to see this genre, what would you say to them? Why should they?
Because I'm in it. And like every little dollar counts. No, I would say wait for the sequel if you don't want to see this one, because
The S word.
You are kind of set up at the end of this.
I know. See, and that's when 13-year-old girls will want to see the movie.
That's what we need. We need these kind of films for the 13-year-old girl.
Exactly. I think girls, like when they see the end of the movie, are just going to cheer, and I really do.
I have a feeling you can draw a few 13-year-old boys.
Well, I tell you, there's like this 7-year-old one. Somebody who's here on the junket has a 7-year-old, and he walked into the TV room where we were doing the TV interviews yesterday, and he just came up to me and he goes, "You were pointing down there at your." He got the joke. I mean, he got the sexual innuendo. I mean, I was just like, "You're 7 years old." And he goes, "And you killed that bug at the end. You're cool for a girl." And I just thought, okay, well, if every kid looks at it that way, I mean, it was interesting seeing it through his eyes and realizing that 7-year-olds are much more wise about these things because of television, I guess.
Now, do you realize this is a sexual experience this kid may carry with him his entire life?
Well, at least he didn't see Jade before he saw that. Could you imagine him taking that with him? I have this image sometimes of all these children across America, stealing the remote control out of their mom's, night table and going and watching it on cable, and just scarring them for life. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
If they do a sequel for this, what would be your idea? How would you like the character to develop? Some things that you...
I had an idea because people keep asking me that, and I thought, I think it should be all the aliens should be like a female invasion of female aliens that Will has to deal with. So he has to turn to me to figure out how you're really supposed to deal with women, and then he learns all this stuff about women, and then he becomes a feminist in the film.
I go see it. It's a great idea.
I know. I think I'll go pitch it.
You just did.
I did.
You have it on tape.
Who's coming in? Is Barry here yet?
We're gonna
What,
play it on the
what is it
airwaves.
though about the genre that you wouldn't go see? Why wouldn't you go see a film like this usually?
Because I might see it because Barry Sonnenfeld directed it. You know, I mean, I even saw Addams Family because he directed it, because I loved his former work when he was a cinematographer, and but that's the only reason. And given the you know, I think I see maybe 2 movies a year in the movie theater. This wouldn't be one that I would choose.
So it's not that you don't like big blockbusters or Alien.
I just don't go to them. I mean, I don't go to the movies that much. I saw Breaking the Waves in the movie theater last year. I think it was the only movie I saw in the movie theater, and you know, I watched them on tape like everybody else. It's just the whole movie-going experience is changed for me because of being in movies, and I don't. It's real. The movie has to be so good. I mean, I wanted to see Night Falls on Manhattan because I love Sidney Lumet and I love all those actors in it. And I was just like, at the end of the movie, I'm just thinking, they sold out. They made it, you know, it's like, it's not a Sidney Lumet movie anymore, you know, by the end. And, you know, I just thought that was a movie I wanted to see. I went to see that. And it's usually the director, whoever directed the movie, that's usually what attracts me to going to a film. Some actors, but not many.
Does that attract you to try directing? Because we've heard it in sessions like this. We've heard actors say that stage is an actor's medium, film is a director's medium.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Actually, there's a project I'm working on right now that I would like to direct called This Year's Girl. And it's a project I was actually going to star in about 7 years ago. Now I'm too old to play the part, so I'm going to try to direct it. And John Dahl is going to executive produce it for me. So that lends a little legitimacy to it. And that's something I would like to get off the ground. It's a low budget love story set in the 60s.
What kind of leap is that? What kind of creative?
I think I've always, and John Dahl even agrees, I've always, you know, from early on, I've always looked at even acting in terms of both sides of the camera. Like, I actually pay attention to where the camera is because I'm interested in that. It gets boring acting. I mean, it's a boring job sometimes. And my background in photography would certainly lend itself to directing and writing. And so I think that, you know, there aren't that many great roles. And so if I could find another way to make a living, I'm more than happy to do it. I would love to direct a movie. And there's one I'm actually working on, and I hope I get the chance.
Wouldn't miss it, huh? The acting.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I would miss like the filmmaking experience. I love. I mean, I love meeting new people. I love that it's all really difficult and chaotic in the beginning, and then you walk away from it feeling like you've accomplished something, even if it's bad. You didn't die. You know? You made it through, and you're not in the hospital. But no, I've never. You know. I haven't missed it on times when I haven't worked, so I don't think I would miss it.
We earlier this weekend we had a session like this with Sandra Bullock, and she was saying also that she is moving away from acting and more toward producing. What difference do you think that's going to make in terms of the films that are done, that more women are going to get involved?
Well, I mean, I think if they would actually give us more opportunities to do that, then I think that you would see a change. I mean, I think you would see a change because it is a, you know, the director's medium and the writer's medium. So I think women are more apt to be material oriented, I think. And it's a nurturing job, directing. I think women are probably better suited for it.
It also seems like...
That sounds sexist, doesn't it?
It also sounds like an endless job. I mean, it's one of those things that it's 24/7 when you're making a movie.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd never get bored.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Who are you rooting for tonight?
Utah, because I want the series to go to 6 games so I can go to the 6th game in Chicago.
She's Chicagoan, so...
All right, okay.
All right, so we're back. Linda Fiorentino. What a very great interview, candid interview. In the years of doing junkets, I've never even heard of fellow actors, I don't know what disparaging or saying negative comments about a co-star.
It would happen every now and then, but most of the time it didn't. Most of the time they were in selling mode.
Right.
They were there to promote the movie and to get people to try to come and see it. And so they would just say nice things, and, you know, working with this person was great, and filming it was great, and everything was an amazing experience. And oftentimes, if that wasn't the true story, we would find that out years later. when it didn't matter anymore, when they weren't trying to sell the movie anymore. It had already done whatever business it was going to do. And so now it's years later, and they can say, actually, that was pretty horrible.
I'm thinking Sandra Bullock post Speed 2, probably.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was definitely one, because she was definitely very complimentary at the junket. And then we talked to her like a year later at Hope Floats, and she was like, yeah, I was lying through my teeth.
Wow. At least she's honest. And it was this was an honest interview with Linda.
Yeah, Linda Fiorentino didn't seem to suffer from that. She was willing to speak her mind. And I do have to wonder, she wasn't in the sequel. The end of Men in Black, if you remember, it ends with her joining the team, and she's going to be one of the men in black, or a woman in black. And it sets it up like the sequel is going to be the three of them. And then the second one starts, and she's nowhere to be found. She's just gone. And I don't think there's ever been any kind of official statement as to why she's not in the sequel. Right. But I wonder if maybe some of the clues might be in that interview we just listened to.
Interesting. Yeah. No, we do miss Linda Fiorentino. She also talked about a bunch of other projects that she was working on at the time.
Yeah. She talked about an upcoming art heist movie, which didn't have a title at the time. That movie was eventually called Body Count, and it went straight to video. She talked a little bit about an idea that she had for the sequel, which actually was sort of what they did. The big bad was a female alien, and that's what she was suggesting. So I wonder whether they listened to her and then didn't put her in the movie.
Oh, that's sad. But that would be sad if that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, they may have gone that way anyway. It might have had nothing to do with her, but it's just interesting that that's what she was saying at this junket, that she thought would be good for the sequel, and then that is what they did. She also talked about wanting to direct, but sadly she never has. Okay, so moving on. Our next interviews are with the producers of the film, and this is actually a really interesting and memorable story.
You can't usually say that about producer interviews. They're usually not that memorable. This one is probably one of the all-time memorable moments.
Well, yeah, the thing is, we were scheduled to get Walter Parks and Laurie McDonald, and just the two of them, which was fine. I mean, we did that kind of thing all the time. So they come into the room, and they sit down, and we're getting set up. We're saying hello. And we hear a voice from behind us, and we look over, and it's Steven Spielberg, who has popped his head in just to say hi to them, not to us, to his co-producers. And, of course, we weren't going to just let him walk away after he poked his head in. So, I mean, you'll even hear at the very beginning of this interview, all of us going, hey, come on in, Steve, join us, come sit down. And at first he's like, no, I'm not, because he wasn't scheduled to be a part of this junket. He was just there, I think, just in the neighborhood, or just stopped by, or maybe he was doing TV stuff. We don't really know. But, we begged him to sit down. So eventually he said yes, and he sat. And then we proceeded to spend our entire time interviewing him and ignoring the other two.
So this is a bait and switch thing. It says Walter Parks, Laurie McDonald, right?
Yeah. Well, they say things here and there, but you'll notice nobody asks them any questions.
That was rude.
They sort of had to fight their way into this interview.
Yes.
Because, we were sitting there with the great Steven Spielberg. And what's funny is he didn't do any other tables. He sat with us and he talked to us, and then he got up and he left the hotel. So nobody else got him. There were, like 6 or 7 other rooms, and they found out that we got Steven Spielberg and they didn't, and they really wanted the tape. So I do remember making a good 10 or 12 dubs for other people just so that, our colleagues could get used to this as well. I mean, it was the only interview he did at this junket that wasn't TV, I think. And
that's such a rare occasion. Getting Steven Spielberg in a roundtable is basically the unicorn of interviews. It really doesn't happen.
I mean, it happened a little bit later. Like, we got him for Saving Private Ryan, but I don't think we got him for Schindler's List. He didn't do them a lot.
Yeah.
But he came and he sat with us, and this was a big summer for him because he had Men in Black coming out, but he also had the second Jurassic Park coming out as well. So we asked him questions about both, because we kind of figured we weren't going to get him for the other. And sure enough, we didn't get him for the other. So we had bites that we could use for both films, because he just happened to be walking by and said hello, and we convinced him to sit. So the other thing I wanted to say to set up there, they were holding toys and they were showing them to us. So there's a couple of moments when they're kind of referring to the toys that they're holding up. Because this is radio, you obviously can't see them doing that. So just so you guys understand what's happening there, that's what it is. They have toys. And anything you wanted to say about this, Greg?
I have nothing to say except get excited, folks. Spieley is right around the corner. I'm sorry, that's a horrible nickname. Spielberg.
I don't think anyone has ever called him that.
Spieley. No, my buddy does. But Mr.
Okay,
Spielberg.
We're starting this here and now. Everyone, from now on, that's what you need to call him.
Spieley. Anyways, no, don't do that, folks. Listen to Matt. He's the bigger professional out of the two. Enjoy this interview.
I'm very upset.
Very nice.
Come on.
Behind you. I'll just sit here. I just came in for my merchandising.
I know, look, he just came in for the stuff.
For the toys.
You can't.
Join us.
Oh, thank you so much.
We're getting boring already.
Yeah, it really is. I think we can take a break by it.
You look just like Steven Spielberg.
I'm not.
It's incredible what this Rick Baker
No, I'm the guy that was on Ellen playing me. This is the best thing.
Yeah, Rick
This is my
Baker's
favorite thing.
Oh, the
right
Ray-
here.
Oh, the
How are
Ray-Bans.
they?
Yeah, these are great. These are great looking glasses.
So do you collect all these toys?
And my kids do. I don't collect them. No, look at this.
So, Stephen, I understand you're really an alien?
I am in the movie. Barry thinks I am, so he stuck me on the screen. Right?
They're great.
Very cool. Aliens.
So what's the history of this film? Where did it? I mean, we know that.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I brought a prop. Just to give you a sense of the time frame, this was the gift given to us when we made the deal.
We put
in 1994, they arrived.
It was actually when the first draft came in.
Yes. No, this
So
was
it was
they
even-
figured when we bought the thing in 1992, we certainly would have a movie out by 94. So a testament to studio optimism.
So what did take so long?
The
script.
The
Yeah.
script. The stories.
Script and the right director. You know, it was such a interesting mix of tones.
There were probably two different versions of the script that we developed internally before we got to this story at all. And yes, then we spoke to Barry Sonnenfeld about it and ended up waiting for him through Get Shorty. So, because a very particular tone that the movie required, and there's very, very few directors who could possibly bring that, and Barry's top of that list.
And you achieved everything that you set out to do. It's wonderful. What was the collaborative process between all of you to make that happen?
Well, it was just starting with the script and paying really close attention to how many different stories could fit into the concept of Men in Black. I mean, Men in Black is a very large idea, and you could really stuff, dozens of stories, and perhaps someday dozens of sequels into that concept. And it was finding the right one to present Men in Black, to people who have only. MIB really is much more of a. It's less. The movie's a comedy, but the origin of MIB is steeped in utter seriousness, and that the humorless men that come to the house and knock on the door and say it was swamp gas, not anything beyond that. That is something that has been part of UFO folklore since Kenneth Arnold coined the term flying saucer.
It was always that juxtaposition of merging of two genres that interested us. The idea that on one hand you have these tough guy G-men who are in some ways really motion picture icons. They connect to gunslingers and 007, all sorts of things like that. Bland men in black suits who somehow know the way the universe works. And to take that and the kind of early 70s police genre that implies and merge that with the 1990s technological science fiction story. And that's really what the difficulty was, the merging those two genres to keep the story kind of on the ground while the ideas floated somewhere in space.
Does starting as a comic book help or hurt? Because it's visual to begin with, and you want to visualize something for film.
It helped tremendously. I mean, just the icon. The story from the original comic book wasn't used at all, but the icon of these guys in these retro suits against that alien world just immediately suggested something you'd never seen. But you can it's something you've never seen, but you can completely relate to, because it's kind of connected to other things you love. And that was really, to us, immediately appealing.
So what was the toughest part of getting this to the screen? Putting it on the screen.
I think getting the script.
Getting the script was the toughest part. But also, this even with a really good script, this film would have would have floundered without Barry Sonnenfeld.
And what
So
when you
what-
when you talk
I mean, he imposed
Yeah.
he imposed a style on this that only Barry possesses. I don't know any other director that possesses the style that you saw in this movie, except for Barry. Barry can balance dark and light in such an extraordinary way. He can get you taking it seriously, and he can also get you laughing along with it, and only he does that kind of thing.
I remember saying early when we wanted him is that Barry can be stupid in a smart way and smart in a stupid way. You know, he's like on one level like completely sophisticated, and yet on a completely like, you know, what is an intuitive idea of what's funny. He has those two things happening at the same time.
Man, I hope that comes out in print okay.
Oh, I've told it to his face.
How hands-on are you, Stephen, when you're not in the director's?
When it is, luckily with somebody like Barry, you know, I'm not hands-on at all. There is nothing for me to do when you've got Barry Sonnenfeld directing a movie like this, which is terrific. Then I can go home and be with my kids.
Stephen, what are your thoughts on the fact this will compete with Lost World?
Well, everything's going to compete with Lost World this year. I think it's great. You know, this is going to be the busiest summer in the last 20 years. It already is, and I just think that's the fact of life. Every single year, we're all competing, you know, for a market, a strong market share, and you know, I've been competing since I began making movies, and we all do. You know, you compete for the best stories. We compete for the most people to come to our movies, and I think it's gonna be fine. You know, I love that kind of thing. I think it's wonderful.
Don't you feel a little guilty with these two movies that take such dominance in the box office this summer?
Not a twinge.
Now, you mentioned, though, that you wanted to go home and be with the kids, and you can trust somebody like Barry Sonnenfeld, but how do you let go, though? How do you let go of a project that you're so committed to?
Well, you know, the letting go thing is easy if you've been a producer as long as I have. It's just one of the things you learn to do. You just learn to, like when Bob Zemeckis comes along, you learn to go home. It's just simple as that, you know, because you know the people who are really strong. And by the way, you know, Barry is extremely collaborative. That's one of the great things about Barry. He's an amazing collaborator. But he has so many good ideas that he'll call me up and ask me a question at home. And if he likes the answer, he'll hang up. And that's the end of it. So I'm just real happy to be near a phone if Barry wants to ask me a question. But he asked me very few on Men in Black because he really understood what this had to be. He had a vision of this movie. Walter and Laurie had a vision of this movie, and that vision really came to life. And when a director has a vision, the director doesn't want a lot of input. You know, I've worked with directors who don't quite have a vision and grasp in the dark for all sorts of suggestions to try to discover the vision. But Barry had this on the first day of shooting.
When you saw the finished product of the Men in Black, was it everything you thought it would be, or was it better? Or?
The first time we saw the movie, Barry brought it over to our house, and we saw the rough cut with Walter, Laurie, and Barry and I just sitting in a room together. And I think at the end, when the lights came up, I just turned to Barry and I said, "I want to see this again." I mean, that was just my first reaction. Was I wanted to go back in the theater and see it all over again.
What was great is also we saw it with almost no effects. And
None.
It was so
No
rudimentary.
effects.
That whole element of the film that's so fun, it played without it. It was so clear that these two characters really worked together and that he'd created a world you wanted to go to. It was really, yeah, we were very excited.
When you've got two characters that click like that and you see it immediately, are you already? I mean, are you working on the sequel already?
We don't even use the S word.
We don't use the S word because we think that jinxes the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't even let Universal talk to me about a Lost World sequel. I won't let them get me in a room about that. You know, it's just ridiculous, and it's something that you think about if you're blessed with a film that makes its money back. But basically, you know, this was something that I mean, we're excited also about someday this going to animation.
Well, it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it like having a movie with such good word of mouth as Men in Black? It must be a confidence booster.
Well, it makes you very
Excited and
nervous.
nervous.
Yeah, you're just all the more sure that big anvil that's about to fall on your head is right there. Just waiting.
You've been watching the Animaniacs too much.
Before about the busiest summer in years, and I'm fascinated by how much product, how little time a film has to really get its legs going. What do you feel about that, the direction that the industry is taking?
Well, here's the thing. The industry's not taking that much of a different direction than it took a couple of years ago. There have been years where the summers and the Christmas season has been just overloaded with films, and there have been fortunate years where there's been a dearth of product. And it runs in cycles. If you look back, look at the Ghostbuster year. Look at the summer of the Ghostbusters. There were a lot of movies that came out that summer. That was a really competitive year, but Ghostbusters broke through. And it would have made more money had there been less competition, but it was the top grossing film that summer. This happens every 3 or 4 years where there's just a flood, and then another couple of years it's very spare.
So there's also a theory that the market will expand.
It stretches.
To accommodate good movies.
Well, there has... I'm sorry, go ahead and finish.
No, that's it.
There's been a trend, and one of the things that I really liked about Lost World was this. There's been a trend in film to have the animals always lived. One of the things I liked was the fact that the dog died in Lost World. We were all thrilled and happy about it. I'm wondering, are you like the only
I got some bad mail on that one, I'll tell you.
That was brave.
I got some bad mail on that.
That
It
can
was
get
brave,
away
and I have
with
a
doing
dog.
that. We all were like,
Well, I like to think that the pit bull, by the way, which it was very careful to cast the dog as a pit bull. The pit bull, I really think, got away, and he just went after the scent on the collar and a few of the kibble bits that had been lying around. But I think the pit bull jumped the fence and made it. And he was, because you never saw the pit bull, you never saw a dog in his mouth, did you? He was chewing on a chain with a doghouse dangling from it. There was no dog on the end of that chain.
He was flossing.
That was it. Exactly.
Nice dance,
Steve,
Right.
we've been hearing a lot about Amistad, and it sounds like an extraordinary project. And having been a little familiar with that story, I'm really looking forward to how you're going to realize that on film. Can you give us an idea of where some of what we're going to see, and what drew you to that story initially?
Well, Debbie Allen drew me to the story. She was very persuasive in her passion for the historical relevance of that story in today's society, and drew so many parallels between what happened then and what's happening now that she made it very compelling for me and almost impossible to walk away from. So she was really the inspiration. And she sat in the room with Walter and Laurie and I, and we heard her idea, her pitch, and she had all the facts from history. It's about a court case. This is really about case law, the Amistad incident. And it is a remarkable series of trials. There was 3 trials right up to the Supreme Court. It's often subtitled the story, the Battle of the Presidents, because the Amistad Africans were defended by John Quincy Adams, a retired representative of 74 years old, and then they were prosecuted behind the scenes by Martin Van Buren, the president who was up against, for re-election, and against William Harrison. So it's a very compelling story. I consider the story, to be remarkably American and remarkably African. It is truly an African-American story.
What about the relevance to today that you mentioned? How do you link that to today's audience?
There's a great deal of relevance to it today, since I still believe we're still, struggling over Reconstruction after the Civil War. Reconstruction continues into the millennium. So I think there's a lot of relevance today, but I don't want to talk about that right now because this is really about Men in Black. So.
But is there more of a sense of responsibility or commitment when you do a film like an Amistad or a Schindler's List versus a movie like this?
Of course, because both those films are based on history, so it's very important that you research the facts and you present them as honestly as you possibly can, whereas a story like this or Lost World is just a free ticket to let the imagination soar.
You just
fiction.
Well, don't ask me that question because I might say no, it's not. Wrong person to ask.
Creatively, though, which process do you enjoy more?
I'm schizophrenic. I go back and forth. I enjoy both processes. If I didn't, I wouldn't have made Lost World.
Now you talk with such enthusiasm. I see so much enthusiasm sitting before us here. Kate once described you as the most amazing man-child. And I think that's perfect from what we see. How do you respond to that, especially talking about the creative process and getting so excited about your project?
Well, when I really get old and I start to drool, I will become the man-child.
Think about your anagram right now.
Yes, what was my anagram? That was great. What was it?
I talk about maybe not working in print.
Oh, you maybe should say that. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you worked up my anagram. Oh, my God.
I'm going to be working on this all morning.
I'll give you guys a clue later. It was interesting when we started working with Stephen, and that to rediscover that you can approach your work as play and it works. I mean that you can actually approach all of this trying to just get things that either amuse you or move you or amaze you, and keep your eye on those values in the material, and the rest will come.
What moves or amazes you guys in this film, Men in Black? I mean, because a lot amazed me.
Wow.
Well, I think the thing that amazed me more than anything else beyond the special effects was the way Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith clicked.
Yeah.
And that I haven't seen a pairing like that since Robert Redford and Paul Newman. And I was really excited about that they really clicked and turned this movie, otherwise it could have been a special effects extravaganza, into somewhat of a relationship film. And that was surprising to all of us.
There was always an idea even embedded in the comic book of the character of Kay, taking the archetype of the world-weary cop, the next step of being universe-weary. I mean, carrying the burden of knowing the way the universe works on your shoulders for 30 years and being unable to tell anybody about it. And I thought the way that Tommy, in very subtle ways, in the middle of a comedy, portrayed that weariness, and that it actually had some emotional content, I think was the thing that surprised me.
I know that I love that he found, he's the kind of ultimate tough guy, but there was such humility under it all, both as a man and as kind of our place in the universe, which I think is great to remember. It's a really nice thing to touch on.
Comic book fans tend to take their literature very seriously.
Yes, that's true.
Is there a responsibility to those people also when you're turning this into a film?
Well, there's certainly a responsibility of encouraging more comic books to be written, so they'll have an endless supply.
Yeah. In some ways, you look at a comic book and you say, well, gee, it looks just like storyboards. In other ways, there's such different forms. I mean, movie stories are so structured and so about, like, telling your story in the most kind of disciplined and distilled way, whereas comic books are really about setting a premise and hopefully letting it go on for issue after issue. And balancing those two aspects of the forms is really tough, and hopefully you don't alienate the comic book readers by making choices that you just have to make for films.
But if I can just generalize for a moment and just say that most comic books are dark, very, very dark, and fatalistic. And so a lot of movies that are based on comics take the opposite approach. Because if you read comics as much as I have, you'll notice that they get darker and darker and more cynical.
One of the things that this film has in common with The Lost World is that while there is much violence, there's not a lot of blood. It's all off screen.
Yeah.
Is that to meet the rating, or is that a creative choice?
It's a creative choice. It's not the rating. I don't think anybody thinks about ratings until the week before we know they're going to the rating board.
Yeah.
And it's just a creative choice to do things. I just think it's more horrifying to hear something or suggest something off camera and let your imagination wander than watching Dieter being eaten up by 50 compies. It's much more interesting just to see a little blood in the water and imagine what's happening behind the log. I mean, that's always intrigued me about David Lean's pictures. And David Lean's violence is mostly off camera and was more provocative that way than it was, in exploiting it or sensationalizing it.
You joked about it. Are you guys true believers in, like, UFOs and things?
I'm a true believer when I see one for myself.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
It's a cookbook.
It's a cookbook. It's a cookbook.
Yes.
That was called Serve Man.
Yes.
Serve Man.
Yes.
Serve Man.
Favorite of all
One of my
favorite moments.
Think we'll ever get to see Firefly?
What?
Think we'll ever get to see Firefly?
Perfect example.
What's an 8 millimeter?
That's a story we talked about in developing
You don't know
this.
how often we
It's just such a perfect.
Got about an hour.
Yeah.
About setting up something, like having the whole premise of the movie.
Thank you so much for staying.
Also, that's so chilling and funny at the same time. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Spiele.
I apologize for that. I apologize for that. That's horrible.
Yeah, so that was Steven Spielberg and a little bit from Walter Parkes and Laurie MacDonald. They were there. We heard them.
Yeah. And we got the interview is really cool because we were, at that moment, we did get a lot of stuff about his upcoming projects.
Well, Cameron Turner got him to talk about Amistad, which I think he hadn't even started filming yet.
Wow.
So it was just kind of in his mind. He knew what he wanted to do, even though he hadn't done it yet. And sometimes it's fun to hear them when they're in that headspace because, we're now in the future and we've seen the movie and we know it. But to hear what he thought before he even started making it is just an interesting perspective. It's a little different.
I also thought what was interesting about that interview was Spielberg was talking about how, as a producer, you understand how he works with filmmakers. If a filmmaker has a strong vision, like Barry did for Men in Black, he'll essentially give them pieces of advice if needed, but he'd let them do their own thing. And that's why a lot of his producing collaborations are with filmmakers with a strong POV, not someone who needs to be coddled throughout their production. I thought that was very interesting as well.
Right. With the one exception of Poltergeist, which I think has now been confirmed that Spielberg actually did direct. It was rumored for a lot of years because it very much feels like his style, but I think it has been confirmed now. Yes, he did direct Poltergeist. He just doesn't have the on-screen credit for it.
Wow, I have to see.
So thank you, Spiely.
Thank you. You're gonna hammer that nickname home. But you know, we're gonna go from Spiely to Big Willie.
Ooh,
it horrible?
That was a transition.
That was a transition. And this is the piece de resistance of the whole thing, right?
Yes, this is Will Smith, the Fresh Prince himself.
The star of the movie.
Yes.
Shall we say?
Yep. So I did want to mention that at the time of this junket, I have it over here, June 8th, 1997
yes.
was when this junket took place, about a month before the movie opened. At the time, he was still in the middle of recording his next CD, Big Willie Style, which was released 5 months later on November 25th, 1997. That was by far his biggest album. Some of the hits, Getting Jiggy With It, Miami, Just the Two of Us, Just Cruisin', and then, of course, the song Men in Black, which was first released as a single because it was in the end credits of this movie, but then it wound up on Big Willie Style as well. So that was a huge, huge album from the 1990s, the late 90s. So he talks about that in this interview. Actually, a lot of this interview is about that album as well, which, again, he was still in the middle of recording. So, he's not looking back on it. He's looking ahead, like, here's what the album is going to be.
Can I close this one out?
By all means.
But until then, take a listen to the star of the episode, Will Big Willie Style Smith.
That was very dramatic.
Thank you, sir. Here we go.
To see you all.
You mean it?
Well, it's just a polite thing to say. But no, I do mean it. That was see, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Much better now that I know that you're being...
All right, let me give you a good level. I'm sorry. Hey. Good morning, yes, and I only had sex with Linda Fiorentino one time, and it was fantastic.
Okay, I got what I need.
So this is radio, so I have to give good, quick, succinct, concise.
We can chop it.
That's why God made razor blades and splicing.
All right.
And don't worry, because we have timers. We have timers.
Oh, perfect.
That will be
And yes.
It'll be ding, and then you have to finish your answer. And you'll have to take your spoon out of the cup.
Oh no, I'm not gonna. I won't.
Well, are you even worried with how this movie will do? Because everyone pretty much loves this movie, and it's pretty much a sure shot that it'll be successful. Or is there's still some kind of
Yeah, that sure shot concept. I'm just not comfortable with that. Everyone has a feeling about a certain movie, and Nostradamus isn't here, so you never know what could happen. With Independence Day, we always said the one thing that could go wrong is that the aliens could show up for real before the movie comes out. So we were always worried about that. And I'm sitting the weekend before, it's like, oh God, please don't come on Monday. So I guess I'm still, you never know. So I'm not that comfortable, but it's not all about the box office. It's about making a good movie and having the fans come and enjoy the movie. So I feel like I've made a good movie, so I've done my part.
Now, well, you've just been through this. Last summer, you had this incredible, once in a lifetime success, and we all expect you're going to have it again, so twice in a lifetime. What does that do to a person? I mean, did that change your life to be in that level of a successful movie?
I guess the success of the movie really doesn't change your life. It's more about how people start to react. I went from, hey, Will, what's up? On the street to, Mr. Smith, hello, it's really good to see you. Hey, congratulations on everything. It's like, something about movie success makes people act slightly differently. I was successful in music and television, but, the movie stuff is just, it's more frenzied. I don't know what it does. Something about that big screen makes people a little crazy.
Well, this is a...
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the industry seems to be moving in that direction. I'm sure you remember that article, I guess it was about a year ago now. LA Times is sort of saying that this is the guy who's going to take over. Sloan and them are sort of moving out of the action genre, and a lot of folks are looking to you as sort of an heir apparent to that. Does that kind of thing fill your head up, or you just ignore that? Do you even want to move in that direction?
Well, I mean, that feels good anytime people put you as the next guy after Schwarzenegger and Stallone. I mean, those guys made some of the biggest movies ever. So it's like, you know, I feel good about that, but I don't want to be an action movie guy. You know, I want to have action movies as a part of what I can do, but I want to be able to do lots of different things in lots of different movies. Eclecticism is a virtue.
This is a very, very funny.
But is it a word?
Yeah, is it a word? Yeah, that's something completely different. It's definitely a virtue. I don't know if it's a word.
It's a religion, Alec.
Yeah.
But this is a very, very funny movie. I found myself wondering sometimes on the set if you really had difficulty, or is it because it's such straightforward, deadpan humor that it was easy to do?
In a weird kind of way, that humor is more difficult. You know, it's easy to fall or slip on a banana peel or, you know, make a big face or something like that to get a laugh. But to just stand there and deliver a line and try to find that perfect line reading and that perfect delivery and that perfect look on your face that says it all, that's really difficult. And working with someone like Tommy Lee Jones, who is the master of just nothing. The words do it all. He just stands there, and he's hilarious every time he opens his mouth. You know, being in a scene with someone like that, it's like being in a game with Jordan. You know, you automatically step up. Your game automatically comes up just being on the same floor with him.
Were you involved with any of the production that went into the soundtrack of Men in Black?
Why, yes, actually, I was. I did the first song. I wrote and produced the first song, and I have another song on the soundtrack. The Men in Black, we just released the video about 3 days ago. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. You know, I just signed a record deal with Columbia Records. So finally made it onto a good record company, so now I can show y'all my real skills.
Does it feel good to be getting back to the music?
Yeah, the thing about the music is it's the most personal of all of the different forms of the media that I've been involved in. You know, the television is and movies are really your just a lump of clay to be molded by someone's able hands. But with the music, I'm molding myself. That sounds nasty, but you know that's kind of how it is. The music is more about what I think and about what I feel.
How back into it are you? I mean, because you took a leave there.
Yeah, you know, I took a little hiatus. You know, now I'm back into music. Probably about 6 songs into the album right now, and you know, I'm feeling really good. I just met with Warren G the other night, and I'm working on a couple tracks with Warren. Worked with the Trackmasters in New York, and my old partner in Philly, Jazzy, we worked on about 4 or 5 tracks. So I'm getting it back together, you know, just shaking the rust off.
Can you talk specifically about the video for this Men in Black? It's been it was a big secretive thing, and then it was released, and you dance with Mikey. And
yeah.
Talk about that in the concept and the song.
Well, the concept of the video really, and what happened, it kind of worked out. There wasn't going to be a soundtrack for Men in Black, but when I started the movie, I just the idea for a video, it just seemed like the Men in Black is such a cool concept. The concept of the Men in Black, people like that. It just looks kind of cool, you know. So I was thinking about it, and you know, I wanted to do an old style dance video, you know, reminiscent of the Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson, that type of style with the Men in Black. And then I saw one of the first cuts of the movie, and they had Mikey, and I was like, wow, can we get Mikey? You know, he looks so real. ILM they make a computer. It looks fleshy. He looks like a real being. So I was wondering, could they do that for a video? And they said, yeah. And then my mind started running. I wrote the song in about 2 days, and the concept for the dance and all of that. And Robert Caruso, the director, shot the video. And you know, it just came. I'm really, really happy with the video. I just think it's fun. You know, it's more in the way that the rap world has been for the past couple of years, you know, and now with the loss of Tupac and Biggie, I think people are like, okay, that is enough. Let's just have some fun, you know. So I just wanted to make a fun video.
Well, can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because you've been pretty outspoken, and I think courageously so, with respect to how rap has developed in recent years. Share with us your opinion about where hip hop stands, and perhaps amplify what you said now, needing to move into another direction.
Yeah, I think, well, what happened is people kind of well, it's more the industry. With rap music, when I first started out, the summer that I released my first record, it was Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Public Enemy, Salt and Pepper, Heavy D, Run DMC, LL, and Eric B. and Rakim. And, that was it. There was 7 or 8 rap records out that summer, and that was it. There weren't any more rap records. Regionally, people had little groups and things like that, but everyone was distinct, and there's a certain level of intellect and artistic dexterity that you had to possess to even get a record deal. And now in the rap signing frenzy, the artists are a lot less articulate and rapping, but don't have a mastery of the language. It's like Picasso knew a lot about painting. He's not just some guy that came off of the street. It's something he dedicated his life to. And now there's a lot of people that are just just trying to get that quick buck. Just trying to do something and out just preaching poison. So I think it's time, and with Biggie and Pac, people have awakened, and it's time to do something different, and I think hip hop's about to go full circle back to the days of Curtis Blow and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 and the Treacherous 3, when it was just about a party. Let's have some fun.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's over. No, absolutely, sir. But you got to jump in there.
So the audience is so used to that preaching poison thing at this point that isn't what you're talking about going to be taken as kind of the bubble gum of rap.
Oh well, it always has been. Everything that Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince, from the time we started rapping, it was always that's corny, and they make their music for white people, and it's always been that, and I don't have a problem with that. People aren't getting killed, with the type of records that I make, so I'll take that.
You made your success in music really off of being a video star.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about going out on the road with this new album?
I don't know. It'll be kind of tough to go on the road. I remember the days out on the road. That's a tough life out there. But I don't know. Do a few shows, getting out and getting around. It's always fun. But with MTV, and BET and all the video mediums now, you don't really have to spend as much time on the road because people, you get into people's homes 2 days after your record's out of the studio. So I think, it's fun to get out there, and it's nothing like being in front of an audience.
Well, exactly. I mean, you're really great at improvisation. You're great at working a room, We see that at the award shows and stuff. I mean, you are really here. But, so, I mean, is that something, but is that something that maybe you want to maybe do a little bit more of?
There's nothing like in all of the entertainment, everything that I've ever done, there's nothing like being on stage in front of 25, 30,000 people. It's just that responding and putting their hands up when you tell them to put, and ho and ow and all of that, and you making it's like you got that's the best feeling in entertainment. So I will definitely get out there. I don't know about those 6-month tours like we used to do, but maybe a week or 2 weeks at a time, and it won't be a tour bus this time. It had to be the Sony Jet.
With this new album, you're at a different place in your life now than you were the last time you put an album together. Is that manifesting itself? Do you feel like there's a growth?
Oh, definitely. I think I'm much more creative than I've ever been. The records that I'm writing are a lot more different. Within themselves, within the body of the album, there's lots of different types of records, whereas when I was younger, it was I didn't really know nothing, so it was just rapping about things that were very similar. But I wrote a song called "Just the Two of Us" about my son and I. So it's things like that, and being away for a minute, you just need a minute to live to find something to write about.
Where are you right now in terms of...
They fighting.
Where are you right now in terms of the Wild Wild West? Because that's got to be a real thrill for you to take on that role,
Yeah, the Wild Wild West, Well, Barry Sonnenfeld, who also directed Men in Black, is going to direct The Wild Wild West, and he came and pitched the idea to me to play Jim West. You know, I thought about it for a second. I say, Barry, you know Jim West was white, right? He was like, oh yeah, sure. No, you can do it, Will. You can do it. Like, okay, it's 1870. And this is a man that has to walk into the White House and beat up a couple guys and sit down and talk to the president. And you want me to do that? He was like, yeah, don't worry. Listen, we'll never even mention it. I'm like, okay, Barry, sure. And he's like, listen, well, you don't understand. Anything I ever do, I want you to be in it. I don't ever want to do a movie without you. And I was like, okay. And he's like, please go talk to George Clooney. I want him to play Artemis. So I met with George Clooney, and he's into it. So I'm like, okay, if you guys buy it, then I buy it.
Can you talk about? I mean, everybody wants you.
Well, that sounded a little personal.
Speaking of I swear I didn't say that. No, I am a big fan, but what does it feel like to have from every? I wish I had.
We're gonna have to clean this up.
Anyway, to get some tape that everybody can use. But you are in a very coveted position. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to have you in their movies, and talk about living this life that you're living right now.
Well, it's actually scary. It feels great, and people send in scripts, but it gets more and more difficult to find something that you want to do, because it's like, okay, Independence Day was great. Okay, now, over the hump, almost with Men in Black. Okay, got to choose the next one. Got to, I want people smiling at the press junket. What's the right move? Okay, well, do people want to see me play a killer? No, but it'd be a good stretch as an actor. But no, people don't want to see that. So it's like you really drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what the next, thing is going to be. But hey, I'll take it. I'll take it this way.
Is this along those same lines? You've also been mentioned about in conjunction with the with the Billy Strayhorn role.
With the
Billy Strayhorn role?
What's that?
Never mind, then you're not doing it.
Yeah, no.
I didn't hear you for an Ali role. Is that?
That was an idea that was pitched, and the script is just about ready. And I thought about it, and I was practicing my boxing in the mirror and all of that. But then I saw the When We Were Kings. It's like it's already on film. Everything that Ali ever said, everything that he ever did, is already on film. It's not like Nixon, where all the things that went on were behind closed doors. So you're kind of seeing it for the first time. Ali was an actor. He was that guy. And I'd be comparing myself to film that already exists. I mean, what am I going to knock Joe Frazier out better than Ali? What else would I be able to add to that story? I mean, artistically, I'd love to do that because it's so rich. But it's like people have already seen it all.
Well, can we assume then that you're not going to be punching out any more aliens in movies, or is this something that you're going to be? Because this is almost you're working on a trilogy here.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to complete the hat trick with the aliens. Two in a row is enough, but you can never say no completely because then a great script comes along. But it wouldn't be my ultimate plan. Right now, I'm talking to Jerry Bruckheimer and Tony Scott about a picture that's going to go in October. So we're pretty close on that. It's called Enemy of the State. So we're close on that. We're not finished yet, but we're getting very close.
What's the role in that?
Enemy of the State, I'd play an attorney, and he gets caught into the middle of some things that are going on with the NSA, and there's a bill that's going to give the NSA almost ultimate power of bugging people's homes and listening on phone calls and all of that. And there's a senator that he's going to kill the bill. The NSA kills him. A guy that it's a really long story, but it's a big government conspiracy, national security agency. They basically destroy my life, and you see how government agencies having that kind of power to dip into our lives. And supposedly right now, they monitor all cellular phone calls. They have a keyword system on cellular phone calls. Anytime you say president or anytime you say bomb, your cellular phone calls are recorded, and they monitor all of that stuff. So it's about the things that they have that people don't even really know about.
The thing you're developing with Jada, or having developed, that's a much lighter story.
Yeah, Love for Hire is a romantic comedy. We wrote that script a couple of months ago. We just sold it to Brian Grazier at Imagine, and we're doing that at Universal. So yeah, that's it's a little lighter, a little fun. It's a romantic thing.
And the two of you are going to star in that together?
No, we're not starring it. That would be a bit much,
This movie does seem like it's set up perfectly for a sequel, though. So obviously they must have talked to you about it, even though maybe you don't want to go back to the alien thing right away.
Well, there's no script that exists for a sequel, but this is a great team. Steven Spielberg, Tommy Lee Jones, Barry Sonnenfeld. I'll play on that team any day. Thanks a lot, guys. All right. Yeah.
I was going to say, and we're back. How about this? Hello, folks. And that's horrible. No, we have a lot of notes, a lot of thoughts regarding Will Smith. I want to start with you, Mr. Levitz, because you have the more interesting stuff to say.
I don't think that's true at all, but I'm happy to say them. So let's see. He says that he talked to George Clooney about playing Artemis in Wild Wild West.
Isn't that cool?
And he said that Clooney was into it.
That would have been a great pairing.
It would have been, but, props to Clooney for recognizing a dud. Wild Wild West was a terrible, terrible movie. Clooney did not wind up playing it. The role went to Kevin Kline.
Yes.
And his career was never the same.
Oh.
So maybe it was pretty smart of Clooney to turn that one down.
Oh, before we get to another point, I want to interject one point, though.
Please.
He was talking about a quote about how music at that point, because you were talking about the album, is his number one form of personal expression, which I find interesting because, he's done music since, but I wonder what he thinks about music these days compared to film as far as priority-wise.
I don't know. Maybe the next time you interview him, you can ask.
Okay. I wanted you to answer for him.
At the next press conference. If you can get a question in with all the other hundreds of journalists.
Exactly.
Can we just mention, by the way, how much we hate press conferences?
Yes, horrible press conferences.
Okay, so what else? He talked about Ali.
Yes.
And this was 4 years before Ali came out, and he gave his reasons for not wanting to do it.
Which is very cool.
At the time of this interview, he had made up his mind this movie was not going to happen.
And it was considered one of his best films.
Yeah, so clearly he changed his mind. And he also talked about the movie Love for Hire, which never happened. Now, he and Jada wrote the script. They wrote it together and they sold it to Universal, but to this day it's never been made.
I have another trivia question.
Uh-oh.
That you're going to answer.
Oh, no.
What is coming up on the next episode?
Oh, that one I actually know.
Can you? I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Well, thanks for pulling off the curtains of the curtains, pulling things.
I'm sorry.
You're pulling things.
Did I ruin the bit?
You did. You ruined my bit.
Coming up next episode, I was going to say next week, but actually I have no idea how frequently these things are going to be released.
Once every day, folks.
Oh, good.
Good. Just will that help the
so
editing process?
That's the whole rest of my life then.
Very good.
Okay. Next episode is going to be True Romance.
Wow.
Which was actually one of your requests.
Oh, so cut out the wow because that's a fake wow, but awesome. That's genuine. That's genuine. I'm so glad.
Wait. So to clarify, wow is fake, awesome is real.
Awesome is real.
Okay.
Awesome
I'm
is
going to
real.
have to remember that.
on the edits when you build the show, sir. No, I'm excited for True Romance.
It's a great movie and a lot of great stars that we're going to talk to. In fact, there's so many of them that we're going to have to break this into 2 episodes because we can't have a 4-hour show.
We can't.
So we're going to do half of them in one episode and then half in the other. And we hope that you'll join us for that. We also hope that you'll check out our webpage at mattandgregpodcast.com and that you'll join us on our Facebook page.
What is that?
It would be facebook.com/mattandgreg. And that's the word and, not an ampersand. So facebook.com/mattandgreg. Please join us and tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we should change in future episodes.
I know what we're doing right is less of Greg, more of Matt. That's what we're doing. We should be doing for a focus on the next episode. More of you, sir, less of me. Less of me talking.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Okay, so follow us on our Facebook page. Please subscribe to us on iTunes and whatever podcatcher you have up there. And again, you'll be able to reach us many, many ways. Matt's a great guy. He's very busy. I'm a lonely man. You can always reach me, so we're good. So we're very good. We will see you next episode with True Rant. Anything else? Because you're the closer, Matt.
I'm the closer.
Close this up.
Well, actually, I think we got a Venice thing, so we'll let them close it, and we'll just say thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
We now return you to your regularly scheduled lives.